if it's also raining, and you could as well tell us, right? So let's get to know where you're joining us from this morning. Okay, so put in the chat room, tell us your name and where you are joining us from this morning. Yes, let's hear from you. Make good use of the chat room. Okay, I see some known names. Okay, actually, this is our mentor day, and of course, we expect to see more of our students and probably less of non-students. So I see names that I could recognize from our past programs. So it's a pleasure to have you all on the call. But then let's get to know ourselves. Okay, so I see Ismail joining from Kano State. Okay, great. I see Olivia joining from Rivers. Great. Okay, David from Lagos. Yes, please, let's not be shy. Okay, let's make use of the chat room. Make use of the chat room. It's just simple. Your fingers move and you tell us your name and where you're joining us from. Okay. So I have Kayode from Lagos. Okay. Mr. Rick from Uganda. Is it raining over there? Is it sunny right now at Uganda, Mr. Rick? Can you tell us? And it's a pleasure to have you on the call. Michael from Lagos. Okay. Audi, Elizabeth from Abuja. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. John from Imo State. Okay, great. Ismail Lawal from Kano. Yeah, I think you've mentioned this earlier. Yes. Yes, let's have it. I need everybody on the call to introduce him or herself. Tell us where you are joining us from. Tell us your name and where you're joining us from in the chat room. Okay, and I would also want to know, what program have you attended in Transformation College? Is it the EBM? Is it the SADC? Is it the business informatics? Is it the information system? Just also let us, for those who are our students or who are part of our alumni, okay, still let us know in the chat room, which of the programs have you benefited from or have you attended in Transformation College, right? Okay, Teslin from Ibadan, okay. Thank you for joining us. All right, yes, let's have that in the chat room, everyone. Quickly. Let's have that in the chat room. Yes. Okay. Okay, David, you are one of our AI and automations students. Okay, great. Josh, SADC alumni, great. Interesting. Okay, but I think we need to share the attendance list in the attendance form link in the chat room. Let's do that so that we can have everyone's everyone fill out the attendance form. Okay. All right. I think we can get on with this while we have, we wouldn't want to keep people on the calls while we wait for others to join. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us from wherever it is you are joining us from this morning. And I trust we are all having a great morning. I know it's holiday in Nigeria. Probably some persons are still trying to get off their bed. I hope not so anyways. Okay, so you're welcome to our mentor day today. And ladies and gentlemen, this is something we do biannually. We've had the first mentor day, and this is going to be our second and last mentor day for the year 2025. And we do this because it's actually important that we get to meet with our students and invite special guests who would join us on the call to actually mentor our students and talk to our students, especially in the areas of AI, machine learning, technology, as the case may be, because this is the world we're in right now and there is no going back. So whether you are into business or any field at all, it is important that we understand the world we're into or we're living in right now and how to navigate and how to coexist, even with, I mean, in some developed world, the machines are actually coexisting with humans as we speak. And some people would say, oh, maybe in Africa, we're not yet ready to see the machines, but you never can tell how fast things would move in this part of the world. Okay, so welcome once again, and this is Transformation College. And before we introduce our trainer this morning, ladies and gentlemen, would like to hear from our proprietor, Dr. Orlando Olumide. He is on the call. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us, and welcome to the call this morning.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Edith and Boma and everybody that has worked very hard to put this in place. So thank you once again, everyone that has taken the time to come here on a public holiday in Nigeria as it is. So somebody is saying the link is saying 12 noon, right? On the call, right? I just shared the link with somebody. Right? Uh, and so I don't know where, maybe there's a mistake somewhere, but it's saying 12 noon, right? So, anyways, I don't know, maybe something went wrong somewhere. Everybody, anyways. So I put this on my page yesterday. So I put it on LinkedIn yesterday. I was saying to Boma that in my lifetime, I don't know, maybe I've had 500 or 600 people over the last 23 or 24 years. I started running a business formally in the year 2002. So if you count 2002 to today, it will be 23 years. But informally is actually 25 years. 25 years because it started from an organization called Set School with myself, Yinka, and another friend of mine called DG. But formally, we started Training Heights and G4V then in the year 2000 and two. So that's straight 23 years ago. And within that time, either full-time contract, whatever it is, I'm 100% certain that I've hired definitely above 500 people within those 23 years, some of them for contract, some of them full-time employees of the organization. Today, we're about 150 people in between Lagos, Accra, Abuja, and growing also in Nairobi. So I have had loads of people in my lifetime. Probably 700 will probably be a much more accurate number as it is. And uh, I can tell you, I mean, of all those people that I've had, some of them are in sales, some of them are in business development, some of them are in HR, finance, and all that. But when it comes to the technical team, and over those years, there's a technical team that have always been the highest number of people that I've hired. Uh, like I have what I call my Hall of Fame, right? My Hall of Fame for technical people, the people that they worked with me and they really understood the job, they got it right, they knew what the work is. About 4 or 5 of those people work for Microsoft as of today. Um, about five, no, about five, yeah, about 5 of the people that are in my Hall of Fame, they work for Microsoft as of today. One of them works for Facebook. Tola is definitely in that is in the top 3 of that my top 10 Hall of Fame. He's in the top 3. Him, Akin. Niji, in Chem, those people. So next year, I'm certain that I'll bring some of those. I'll probably bring Niji on the call at some point in time. So uh, I put this up yesterday, and this kind of says everything that I wanted to really say. I mean, Tolo worked into my office, and as I said, in 2 minutes, I already I already was certain that I was going to hire him. And there are people like that. Yesterday, I still interviewed a guy who's graphics developer and design person. And speaking with him in 3, 4 minutes, I kind of already, I mean, there's not a lot to think and pray about. I already knew I was going to hire the guy. Smart guy, vectorization, I mean, the conversation in 10 minutes, in 5 minutes, the conversation had gone very technical, and you could see his thinking, his approach. And once in a while, I come across people like that, people that walk into my office for an interview, and they're like, okay, I'm definitely hiring this guy. So, with the people that have worked with me, Tola is definitely in that top three bracket. And I can tell you, he's one of those people that, I learned a lot from while he was my employee. So, and that's not very common where you say that you're actually learning from the people that you've hired. I remember we would have all those Bitrix conversation, Odoo, and many other platforms that will go back and forth around UI, UX type conversations. I mean, SharePoint. I mean, the conversations were always endless in those days. And then he's gone to the US, studied in one of those very expensive schools. So please, Tola, please, somebody should drop his LinkedIn page in the chat room, so you will see all the roles like he has had. I mean, at some point in time, he had like three offers, I think, before he even left the school. The way he was doing his masters from Bank of America to Google. I can't even remember the other one that he was telling me. So, and I haven't seen him in more than a decade, I'm certain, right? So I haven't set my eyes on him in a very long time. So when we wanted to do this, the last one we did was, I think that was on May Day. I brought in Ken Mike, and I'm certain everybody had an excellent time. And Mike was one of those guys that worked with me earlier these days, and he's an excellent guy. So I was looking for, what is the closest now as it is. That's when I then said, you know what, I think Tola is the person that I'm going to bring in. So when it comes to I mean, when it comes to everything, I'm sure you will listen to him yourself. Um, when it comes to everything, I don't know whether it's infrastructure that is your concern, or it's databases, or it's APIs, or it's applications, or it's artificial intelligence. It pretty much is done any and everything, and he has done these things at heights that are, that are beyond the should I say, almost say beyond human comprehension. As it is, I can talk about him on and on, as it is, and then you share a lot about life, about work, about career. I mean, if you look at him on the LinkedIn, you will see that he's a senior product manager now in Google. He was in Google, then left Google, and now he's back in there. And I don't think you get to those kinds of heights except indeed you know what it is that you are doing. So once again, thank you very much everybody for being here. I think we must have made some mistakes, because even on my screen here, you can see that it's showing 12 noon. Meanwhile, we're doing this 10 o'clock Nigerian time, 9 o'clock Ghana time. So I guess we've made some mistakes in planning out the time and specifying it across all the platforms in a uniform way. But we're here, and the good thing is that Ola is here, and we're also going to ensure that this goes on some of our platforms, so people can go back and listen to the recordings and things like that. I think the last one we did, somebody will probably share the link. It's on YouTube, so we'll probably put this on YouTube also. This is not a paid engagement. We're not paying for this. This is not a commercial engagement. Tola is just here. Ebenezer, as people call him, I like to call him Tola, is here purely pro bono, and purely on what I will call corporate social responsibility. There's no commercial arrangement relative to this as it is. And I wanted to make that clear because I mean he's an employee of Google as an organization. So Tola, thank you very much for taking the time out to be here. Appreciate your time. I know we didn't even really speak on the phone. I just sent you a message and like we'll give you a date. And I know you've been extremely busy. If you're in the US, that means probably 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock where you are as of now. I like to believe because it's 10 o'clock in past 10 in Nigeria. So I believe you're probably 4 or 5 o'clock. If you're in the US today, you just might be in China or one of those other places. So everybody, with a massive, massive round of applause, please welcome with me Mr. Ebenezer Tola Anjorin as he takes us through everything that he wants to take us through. I mean, he's called it, what's this thing again? The human potential in the machine world. And I'm sure he will share thoughts, opinion, where this world is going, where are we going in the year 2026, and even in the year maybe 2030, as the case may be. What should we take into consideration? What kind of skills and capabilities should we start to build that will make us extremely relevant even into the future? So please, everybody, with a massive round of applause, please welcome with me Tola as he takes us through this session over the year. So I mean, he says it's 5:21 where he is. We had to wake him up at this time for us. So please, everybody, you can also drop your expectations as he will be speaking to us in the chat room. I'm sure it's going to be highly interactive. It's not really going to be like a lecture. I'm sure he'll share his thoughts, share his opinion, and hopefully guide all of us so that one day we might be like him as it is. So once again, Thala, please welcome. Thank you very much, and you can take it over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me well?
I can hear you. I can hear you, Thala.
Yeah, it's really such an honor to be here today. Like you said, we really haven't seen in a very long time, and obviously when I got the ping from ED, it was an automatic yes, even like regardless of what I had going on, because again, it was actually funny when I saw your message yesterday. Like it did occur to me was close to 14 years ago, that I worked with you at G4V, and that was, I would definitely say it was one of the best moments of my life. It was it was really interesting times, great opportunity, amazing projects that we did, and I also just want to thank you for all of your support during that time, and particularly when I was coming to the States, because you played a critical role as well. So definitely want to say thank you to that. And I want to thank Edith and the team that put this together. I've been in the States for since 2012, and over the years I always look for opportunities to give back, to help mentor the younger folks who are trying to get into the industry, and I think chart their course. So I happily do things like this, just because I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I want to make sure that I think everyone has the right information and they have the right access to it. So again, I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Orlando. I also want to thank Aiden and the team that put this together. It's really such an honor for me to be here today, and hopefully we have such an amazing time together. And by the way, I think my voice might be coarse a little bit, because yeah, it is actually 5:20, 5:24, early in my time, which I can also confirm that I think there was a mix-up in the invite, because my local invite actually showed 11 a.m. my time, so I really could have missed this, but glad that didn't happen. All right, so let me pull up my presentation, and we can kind of just go through the content that I have. And as Dr. Orlando said, my goal really is just to share a few thoughts, and more than anything, is to have a conversation with you all. Take your questions. See how I can give you hopefully some useful tips, useful information that you can find useful going forward. So let me bring up the slides. Folks, let me know If you can see, please, use the chat if you have any question, if you have thoughts, comments, like any of the stuff would be super useful. Like I said, my goal is to make this as possible and ensure that you all get value for your time. So mentorship in the age of AI, guiding human potential in a machine world. My name is Ebenezer Anjorin, or for folks like Dr. Lando that know me as Tola as well. I also go by Tola. There's a long story to why most people call me Ebenezer now, so maybe we can we can take that on on another day. But just very quickly about myself. So yeah, I live in the States. I currently work as a product lead at Google in Google Cloud. A lot of my day to day is around ensuring that we have products. Obviously, some of the products that I lead serve close to 3 billion users in the world. So like that's just incredible scale, and that has implications from the business side to the technology side. And a lot of what I do is just making sure that we are able to, build products that meet the needs of our users, globally. Again, we're saying, 3 billion of them, as well as ensuring that we're staying ahead of the technology landscape and, using that to ultimately, help users and businesses be, as productive as they can be. I live in Atlanta right now, with my wife, and I have 2 boys. And we can talk about maybe more personal stuff at the end if folks have questions for me. All right. So when I was given this topic, I was kind of thinking about like how to structure the conversation in a way that will be productive for everybody. And also, given I wasn't super sure of like who is going to be the audience, I think the first thing I want to do is kind of give you a sense of what the agenda is. It's a 3-part talk, if you will, that I've put together for you all. So the first part is just to give you a sense of the AI landscape in terms of just like where we are today. I mean, I'm sure you've all been following this space very closely, unless you live under the rock, which I'm sure you all don't. So I want to just give you a sense of like where we are and like what are the what are the critical things that really you should know? Like, how do you separate the signal from the noise, so to speak? And then after that, I'm going to move to just talking about like what AI means for the future and, future of work. And, when I mean work, it could be employment, it could be, entrepreneurship, like it could mean whatever um, you see as like your professional part. So, I don't mean work as an employee necessarily, but like really like how is AI gonna really shape society in the future, and what are some of the things to think about? And then lastly, I want to leave you guys with just some thoughts on like how to prepare. I mean, I think, AI, as I say, is coming for everyone, including folks like myself who are actually building AI. I think AI is coming for us all. So I want to share some thoughts on just like how to be prepared, what to think about, what skills you want to start to acquire and what skills you actually want to drop, because some skills are not going to be relevant and they could actually alter you, I think in the future that we're heading for. But before we move forward, though, I do want to just get a better sense of the audience, just to make sure I can also, I mean, even though I have I have a set of slides, I can also just tailor some of my points and my conversation to you guys. So if you can just give me a sense of, maybe just in the chat, like, like, are you like, I guess just like, where are you? Are you a college student? Are you a working professional? Are you, NYC, secondary school? If you can just kind of drop that, that would be good. And then also, I also want to understand, like, is this a mostly technical audience, or are folks already, in the industry? Are you already doing things with AI? Or are you just, curious? And then maybe, finally, if you can just drop some charts about like, what you want to get out of this session, like what will be, if there was one thing that you're mostly excited about or that you're curious about. Yeah, that would be good for me to know, just to make sure that, again, I want to make sure that this is, super productive time for everybody. So yeah, if you can drop some chats about, again, one is just your background in terms of like, where you are you at school, are you in uni, are you a recent grad, are you working professional? I think that would be very helpful. And then I think the second is you also give me a sense of like, are you like in the industry? Are you technical? Are you, working in a different industry, finance, legal, doctor, whatever? And then also like, what are you really thinking about? What would you like me to absolutely talk about? Just to make sure that, I can be sure to address those. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks. I see Elizabeth. She's a working professional in banking. That's amazing. I see Babs, an insurance broker. Want to know how AI can enhance and optimize their business. That's amazing. Michael is in banking as well. I see. Okay. Batra, IT professional. Okay, so it looks like it's actually mostly folks in the industry. So this is really good. How to use AI in banking, fantastic. Levi is a freelance web developer. All right. Please keep those things going. And I'm just gonna, start a conversation. I'll keep my eye out on the chat. And like I said, my plan is to leave enough time at the end to really take a lot of questions and make sure we can, we can cover everything you guys have in mind. All right. So let's start on the first part of this conversation, which is the landscape, right? And there's sort of really three sort of subtopics I want to cover, right? So one is just like, what is AI, right? There's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of hype, around the AI, and I want to make sure that at least, we can level set and folks can have a sense of like what are we really talking about. And then the second is I just want to talk very quickly about like AI in your daily life, like what does that actually look like, and what might you expect in the future. And then I also want to help you guys just get a better sense of the current landscape in terms of like just the platform shift that we are going through right now, and just some of the things that it's good for you to know about. All right, so like when most people think about AI, right? I think they tend to think about ChatGPT, right? Because I think that was sort of like that was the pivotal moment. I guess it was the introduction to AI for a lot of people, right? When I guess when they first used ChatGPT, and you have these amazing products that could essentially you know um simulate, I guess, like talking to a real person, and it could just do like amazing things. um and and while that's AI, like the truth of the matter is AI has actually been around for a very, 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 very long time. When I was in grad school, I had professors that have been researching AI since like the 80s, right? Like so this is not particularly new. There's people that have been working on AI for like a very long time. And even I myself, like back in 2017, I was leading a team at Google working on the assistant. So if you've used any of this like voice smart speakers, where you can say, okay, Google, what time is it? How tall is Barack Obama? What does TCP mean, and so on and so forth. I was in a team where we were actually working on a pretty complicated use case, which is like, how do you, like have an assistant that can help people shop, and I mean, like buy stuff online. And that's a pretty difficult thing because, for you to buy, say, a shoe online, you need to be able to see it, you need to be able to, know what the, options are, you need to know what what the brands are, and so on and so forth. And, that was AI, and we didn't even have large language models then, right? Like we had sort of, some of the precursors to that. But, like that was AI, that was ML. So like that's not particularly new. Like we've had machines learn from data for a very long time. And that's really what like like in the industry, people say, a machine learning, where you basically have a lot of data, and you're basically trying to, train a machine, to be able to, learn from the patterns, in the data, and then make predictions in the future, right? And that's, usually like use cases where you might have an image, and you say you want to train, a software to like, recognize signatures, or to, recognize faces and stuff like that. You can basically train a computer basically to know like, is this image a dog or not, right? That's machine learning, and that's not, like that's in particularly new. That's a, mostly like a predictive use case. But then, came ChatGPT, which was again like the like the main catalyst for a generative AI, or what we just say as Gen AI in short, which is like now we're not just trying to again like predict necessarily, we're trying to come up with new content. And like when I say new, there's a lot of debates to like to what extent it is new, right? Because it is basically, like all these models, and I'm gonna talk about them a little bit shortly in detail, but like essentially, like you've trained all this, models on the internet essentially, and they're basically trying to generate new content based on things that that you've seen essentially. But like it's still new in like in the sense that they can come up with something new, right? Something that wasn't really sort of explicitly trained to them. And it's not just text, it's now you know multimodal in the sense that like you have machine essentially or software that can generate text, but it can generate the videos, they can generate images. And that's really like that was a huge shift in terms of just again like having systems that's just classifying, is this a cat or a dog, or is this fraud or not fraud, which is what a lot of the ML systems did. To now you have these models that can actually produce content, and especially a text, right? They were really good at generating text. And and we're moving to I guess like what is agentic AI? And again, like I try to keep some of these conversations pretty broad because my goal is just to give you like a sense of the landscape, and obviously not to get too much into the weeds. But I think that the real change is really now that we're moving to not just machines that I've just been trained on a bunch of data and they can understand patterns and they can either predict or they can generate, to machines that can they can do the learning part, but they can also think, and or they can reason. And again, like there's a lot of debate to like, are they actually reasoning? Are they actually like thinking? And I think that those debates don't really matter because they're more philosophical in some way, in the sense that like as humans, like what does it like what does it even really mean to think, right? Like we don't if you ask people who are like neuroscientists, it's just so much about the brain that we don't really know. So maybe it doesn't really matter, right? Like if he, if he barks like a dog, then maybe it is a dog, right? So you have this like software systems now that can essentially like they can reason, right? So they're not just coming up with like stuff. Again, they're not just generating stuff. They can actually think about what you're doing, and then on top of that, like they can take action, which is sort of the holy grail, right? So again, like when I was in like again, back from like 2017 to almost like 2020, on the assistant, like a lot of what we were trying to do was actually to, in fact, I was leading a team at a time where my goal was to build an assistant that could almost like work as a like a sales rep. So like say you walk into a shop, I don't know, you walk into, what what's a local shop in Lagos or anywhere, right? And you want to buy again jeans or whatever, right? Like you have a conversation about like, hey, I want to buy these jeans, this is my size. You might see something, you might ask them, do you have this color? Like you want to be able to have like a true conversation, like a back and forth, which is what we call like a multi-tone. It's not just a single shot conversation where you're saying, hey, turn on the lights, right? That's just a single shot. It's a straightforward question. But when you really want to have a like, like a more detailed, like a robust conversation, then you need a machine that can keep, that can keep states, that can think, but then on top of that, we wanted something that can actually take action for you. That can, say like in the case of shopping, that can go buy the thing for you. And that's pretty difficult because especially when the action is like it's even outside the domain of the system. So the action will require system to talk to some other system or to maybe even take some action like in the physical world. So it's this reasoning and agency, which basically means that you have an autonomous system that can actually basically do things by itself, almost like you delegate to like an assistant or to some employee or to your brother, to go get things done. You can have you can be relatively confident that they will be able to do it. So like this is really like where the focus is right now, and I think this is really what the game changer is. But again, like I think the main takeaway is when we say AI, like we mean like all of these things. I think ultimately it's about getting a software to be able to behave as close to a human as possible. And again, whether it is it is artificial or not, if it is if it's able to perform as close to human intelligence, then maybe that's good enough. And we're going to talk about stuff like AGI, what it means, if we're there. But I kind of just want to set the stage with this three framing, and I think this will inform some of the things I'm going to talk about next. Now, I just threw the slides together because, like I said, like we've all been using AI for a very long time. So, this is not, like it's not something that is particularly new. Some of it is very new and changing very quickly. But like you all use, social media, you've been using that for a while. All of that is powered by AI. I'm sure you use Google search. We've been using AI for that for, like forever pretty much to determine, of all the like websites in the world, when you type a query into the Google search box, like which one should we show you, right? Like, that's something, that is, as you can imagine, pretty complicated to do. And, you can throw a lot of data, at a machine and have it, figure out based on a bunch of signals, which is the right, link for someone to click, right? When you go to, Amazon, or you go to, any of these sites and they're trying to, or even at Netflix, right? And you watch a movie and they say, hey, we think you might like this movie, or based on this show, we think you might like that show. Like that's all AI, that's all machine learning. I see there's a lot of folks in banking, right? Like banks have been using, some form of, machine learning like forever to like fight fraud, right? You have this, a Markov model. I actually remember, when I was in grad school, I don't know if Dr. Orlando remembers, but I remember, connecting him to one of my, professors at CMU, who was working on some of these Bayesian models, and we're thinking about, how we could potentially deploy that for some of the banks in Nigeria. That was, I don't know, Osaka 2013 or something like that. So yeah, but anyway, like my point here is like there's a lot of shifts happening, but also this is like the old is new again, right? Like, we've been using AI for a very long time. I think the difference now is obviously, going back to the last slide, like we're going from systems that were essentially just predicting things to systems that can now really think, but also take, actions as well. Now, I think for you guys, like this is probably this is one of I would say the most important slides on, like on this deck, and I will tell you why. So if you think about like the shift, right, like the platform shift, right, we've had like two major ones, right? Like there's the internet, which is which has been just critical, right? Like we can have this conversation, you guys, from all around the world. I'm here, in the US, and we can have this conversation thanks to the internet, right? And then you add a mobile, which was also like like a game changer, because if we didn't have smartphones, we all be like glued to to this huge things called a desktop, and you lose mobility and all of the things we now do on smartphones. And these were two huge waves that I think really shaped society and the world that we live in today. And I think the main thing to keep in mind though is like, like in these last two waves, it was still like humans doing most of the work, right? That's sort of the 90-10 where, like think of like if you want to apply for a bank loan or whatever, like you want to open a new account, you're still filling the forms. But ultimately, maybe that then gets like, someone is then going to type all of that in the computer, and then it goes into some ERP systems and some workflow, all of that stuff. But like even though it looks like the machine or the like, when I use machine in this talk, I'm like I'm in computers generally, like in whatever form factor, that they show up in. But like for the most part, like computers were still just doing like the last mile, right? Like we humans did, like we did majority of the work, whether that's form filling, whether that's downloading data from somewhere, uploading it to some other system. Like there's just a lot of things that we humans still had to do. Again, even if it's something as simple as social media, right? You have to like create the content yourself and post it yourself. There's just so much stuff that people have to do. I think the huge shift and the implications thereof is this sort of flip, which is I think we're moving to a time where machines are probably going to do 90% of the work. And again, like this has massive, massive implications, both in terms of like how we design software, but also just for practical things like how work gets done, who does the work, how many teams you need, what workflows look like, and so on and so forth. But like this is like, and also this is the opportunity as well, which I'm also going to talk about. But I think again, like I said, this is a critical slide that I want you to kind of think about, which is like the world is changing to where like humans did a lot of the work and computers kind of like, did last mile to a world where you're going to have a lot of computers that have agency and they can do a lot of these things. And, like, again, this is not about like machines replacing humans. I mean, maybe that's going to happen at some point. I don't really know. But I think for the foreseeable future, you're still going to have, humans in the loop. But I think the shift is going to be that, the computers are actually like, picking more of the tab, so to speak. Like computers are just going to be capable of doing, so much more. But and then like this then raises the question of like, what does that then look like? What skills do you need? What exactly, does that look like? So in terms of the capabilities, that is like at the frontier, and by frontier I mean like the bleeding edge. This is not even cutting edge. This is like like work that's happening like today. You know what I mean? And there's just like very few companies in the world who are actually driving this. But like if you boil it down, it comes down to these three things. So like one is you have machines, and again I kind of clarified that when I say machines on this call, I mean I mean computer, I mean software very broadly, right? I don't mean like a physical device, I mean the hardware, the software, like all of that together. But like essentially, like you have AIs that have, human level perception, and this means basically like they can see, they can hear, they can, like all of the inputs, maybe not all, but like most of the inputs that we as humans, take in to then, make a decision. Now you have computers that can basically do that, right? So again, if you think about like, self-driving cars, and I don't know if you guys have seen those, but it's already all over in the US, here in Atlanta, in the Bay Area, like you can literally call a self-driving car, say where you want to go, and the car just takes you there. Like this is not even science fiction. It's not in the future. It's here. Like it's just commonplace. And if you think about like what a machine, or what the car needs to be able to do that, it needs very similar signals that you, the human driver, need. You need to be able to see what's in front of you. You need to be able to, like to know if it's, if it's safe to like switch lanes or accelerate or decelerate and so on and so forth. So I think, this is one of the dimensions that is really changing the game, which is like, we have computer that's so good at like thinking about text. They can think of audio, they can obviously, consume audio, but also, produce, audio as well. And also, same with, videos and so on and so forth. And then on the world knowledge side, now you have this, AI that is basically like they know pretty much everything more than anybody. I mean, essentially, like they know about, like in any domain, like any discipline, and they don't know it just at like the ordinary level. It's almost like PhD level and above, right? In fact, I think like the Google DeepMind, a model recently achieved gold level at the um, you know, um, international like maths Olympiad. I mean, this at like, maybe I don't know, the top 1% in the world can actually like, solve that, right? And then I think, like Grok, which is the one that, XAI produces, also like, achieved some like, like remarkable scores on some tests that you need like, not just like one PhD knowledge in a discipline, but you need to have like pretty much multiple, PhDs in like science and arts and history and so on and so forth. So like essentially, like you have this, you know, machines that just don't have, human level perception, but they pretty much know everything about everything. And then on top of that, they can now think, they can tool use, which I will talk about, which is where most of the, agency comes from. And they can basically, they can code as well. So that means they can kind of write their own software to then go do things in the real world, and it's general purpose. So like this is really where the platform shift and the next wave is coming from. Is really from the three, underlying capabilities. We have machines, that have this level of perception. They know about pretty much everything. They can think, they can get things done. Now, I kind of want to give you guys a sense, and some of this might be familiar already, but I also just want to give you, sort of a sense of who the major players are. And there's a lot of caveat here because there's the this is I think the capex estimate for AI is going to be something about $3 to $4 trillion over the next 5 years. So like there are lots and lots and lots and lots of players here. But I want to give you a sense of just like who the like who the major players are in the sense of like, so, the way the industry or the landscape is right now is you have companies who are like, who have the data and the money, and we're saying like, billions of dollars to invest in producing what we call like the foundational models, right? Or the foundation models. And these are the models that are basically, general purpose, trained to be able to just do a wide variety of tasks, right? And then you have companies, oftentimes the same companies as well, who then train a subset of these models. And some of them are the ones you've used, like, ChatGPT, which is which is an LM, a large language model. You have some that are, like the Midjourney, which is basically a model that is optimized for, images. You have the new Gemini, and then a banana that is also, optimized for images. You have Veo that does videos and so on and so forth. So essentially, like you have these major companies who have the money and the resources and the data, and the talent and all of that stuff to be able to train like this base models. But then you have a lot of, pretty much everybody else who is building on top of those models because, and that's the good news, right? Like it's not like you need to be like an AI researcher to actually be able to like do something in this space. You have all these big guys who are already doing all of the legwork, and they offer platforms and APIs that other companies can then build on top to then offer all kind of solutions. And I have a long list for you guys. But again, like I'm sure you probably used OpenAI. I'm pretty sure most of you probably using ChatGPT, but like there's a lot of other players in the space. You have Gemini from Google. You have Claude from Anthropic, which I really like actually. You have Grok from XAI, and there's just there's just so many of them, right? There's there's DeepSeek from China. There is Llama from Meta. It's a very long list, but I just wanted to give you a sense of like who the major players are, and also kind of help you understand if you read about what the foundation models are, you can kind of have a sense of that, as well as what the derivative of those are, things like LLMs that are basically built on top of the foundation models. And then like more importantly is I think because of the current configuration, it actually means that like like you don't need to have a PhD, or you don't need to necessarily be the one building this a foundation models for you to work in IT. The good news is all of the heavy lifting is actually mostly done, and you can just stay almost at the application layer and do and do amazing things. All right, so that's the first part of the conversation. And hopefully giving you guys a lot to think about, some useful information. But again, like I said, if you have questions, you can start dropping them in the chats, and we can get to them at the end. All right. So let's move on to the second part of the talk. So this is what I want to talk about, just AI and the future of work. And I think I said at the very beginning that AI, I'm using work pretty loosely, right? So this could mean the work that you do today. It could mean your personal life in some sense. It could mean you starting and running a company. And I just want to give a sense of like what the reality check is in terms of just, I think most people's concern is AI is going to replace me. What does that mean for my job? So, I want to give a sense of that. And then I also want to talk about, I think, what I think the opportunities are. And then, I think the skills that matter most. And I think also talked about like the skills, that don't matter as well. So, I mean, like, here's the trick, right? I think like you can think of this along maybe 3 dimensions, right? There's like the jobs that are definitely at risk. There's jobs that are going to be transformed, which is probably going to be every job at some point. And then there's going to be jobs that will be created, right? I think the mental model to have is, I mean, pretty much any job that's like routine, it's very predictable. There's not a lot of, kind of like critical thinking, those are the ones that are definitely going to go away. I think that's just, if you're doing any like customer, like any basic, and I think there's some level of customer service that's going to be around, but definitely any sort of basic customer service kind of job, any front desk, data entry job, even coding that used, everybody used to be like, like go learn to code, and I will kind of give me perspective about like whether you should learn to code or not. But like essentially, like those are the jobs that are definitely already getting, eviscerated, right? Like that's just a no-brainer. Those are going to go away. And then there's the jobs that are being transformed, and I actually think just every job will be. I mean, like even if people joke and say, everybody should go and be a farmer, or be a plumber or whatever. And I think it's just a matter of time because there's the old robotic world, and you have Optimus from like Tesla. Like I think eventually AI is gonna touch everybody. They're just not running away from that. So, but I think for like most of us who are like, a knowledge worker, so whether you're working in the finance, tech, education, I think like, these are, these jobs are gonna be, they're currently being transformed. And then, I think as with any of these waves, again, if you think of the internet, if you think of a mobile, there are lots of jobs that exist now. I mean, the one that I think of the most is like, online influencers, right? Think of it like, social media influencer, or think of, podcasters and stuff like that. I mean, like, these were jobs that like, I guess job titles that, like when I was growing up, didn't even exist, right? Like, you couldn't say you want to be a podcaster, right? Because, like the environment just, it didn't even exist, period. You know what I mean? So, I think there's definitely going to be like a lot of new jobs that are going to be, emerging, and being created. And I think the truth of the matter is, we just don't really know yet. I mean, obviously, there's some jobs like, prompt engineers and, like AI quality engineers and like AI PM and AI this, AI that. I don't think those are necessarily new jobs per se. Like, like again, like I said, I've been doing AI for a very long time. So when I see people say AI PM, I'm just like, yeah, like what are you talking about? But I mean, I kind of see where, I see where people are coming about, coming from. So like, I do think like the real new jobs that are going to emerge from the widespread adoption of AI, I don't think they are, I don't think we know yet, but we're definitely seeing some like early opportunities, and I think this is, this is good because, maybe some jobs are going to go away and some new jobs that we don't even know yet are going to be created, which is, which is good. Um, but I think, I think the opportunity, like, even though again, like I know, especially like globally, just, like economies everywhere are tight, the job market is tight. Like even in the US, folks who go to like the top schools, the Stanfords, the Berkeleys of the world, the Harvards of the world, and you come out with a computer science degree, you have 4 or 5 job offers that are kind of ready for you, and even those guys are struggling right now. So you can imagine, like if a Stanford CS grad or like a Berkeley CS guy is actually struggling to get a job, then that's not a good place to be. But I think there's still a lot of opportunities, and I just want to give you a sense of what I think the opportunities are. I think the first thing is it is day one, and by day one I mean like it's still super early, right? Like again, even though like AI has been around for like a long time, I think in terms of this wave itself, I think it's still super early that like it actually doesn't take it doesn't take a lot right now to be almost like a 1%, like in the AI a knowledge space. It's not like you have to go back to school to like get a PhD to actually say like AI. And again, of course, like you're not going to be building a model, anytime soon, but you don't have to do that as well, right? Again, you have all these companies that have all the PhDs in the world and all the money in the world doing that. But like, but by just developing, taking some like few courses online, and again, I get into the specifics soon. You can actually start to develop the skills that really separate you from like a lot of people. Like one of the things I think about a lot, again, like I've been in the States for like, over a decade now. And sometimes I wish I was in the States, during the peak of the, internet boom, because then I was in college in Nigeria. I was already like, writing software and like, building stuff. And someone said, like, I wish I was just here because this was where all the action was happening. Like, like I started my first company in Nigeria back in 2019-ish, in 2019, 2020, and the landscape was just so different then, right? The funding wasn't there, smartphone penetration wasn't even, people were still using BlackBerry, like a lot of people didn't even have smartphones, internet was like ridiculously expensive. So like, it was just really difficult to even, to really build like, like a proper tech product at scale. But if you kind of fast forward now, I mean, like, which I'm sure you guys all know, right? You have all these companies like Candela and a Flutterwave and all this, like, so what, like, who are doing pretty well. And that's because sometimes, like, you want to be, alive when the action is actually taken on, right? Like when things are taken off. And I think, like in that sense, it is day one. Like it's not like all of the opportunities are already gone and like there's nothing for everyone else to do. No, like like the party just getting started, and this is when you want to be at least close to the party. If you're not in the party, you actually want to be close to the party so you can know like when the main action is actually starting. So yeah, I think it is day one in that sense. I think the second thing in terms of to think about the opportunity and maybe get you guys excited is I think the barrier to entry is actually pretty low. And again, I want to be clear, like if your goal is to really be like a machine learning engineer, then yes, of course, like there's a lot of things you need to know. You need to know the code, or you need to know maths, you need to know calculus, like because like those are all the fundamentals of like all those things that you see. But you don't necessarily have to do that, right? Like, if you don't have the skills or that's not even your cup of tea, you have to do that either to to actually say about AI and to be like in the space. There's just a lot of things you can do again at that sort of application layer, just building upon all of the hard work that much smarter people already figured out. And also I think just given where we are in the world today, you can go on YouTube and and you can learn. There's a lot of free courses that you can take. Again, I have a lot of those resources at the end of the slide. But I think the barrier to entry is actually relatively low. Again, especially like even if you wanted to say like no, I really want to be like a machine learning engineer, like like even that there's just there's tons and tons of resources online, and people that would that would mentor you. Again, this is not like again going back to Nigeria in the 2010s where like some of us, I remember like, you have to go to a cyber cafes and like, stay, overnight just to do research and, because the internet wasn't widely available and power wasn't good. And, like these days, I mean, I would imagine pretty much every young Nigerian has a smartphone, has internet, 24/7. But I remember like in my lifetime, like going to cyber cafes in Nigeria, like, overnight and my parents would freak out, like, why are you going to a cyber cafe overnight, to just go like research and learn about stuff. So, I think the opportunity is actually there if you have the right motivation and the resources. And it's not even like you have to pay like a ton of money. I think, there's just a lot of things you can, that you can learn pretty easily. I think the third point is the value shift, and this is important, especially for like a Nigerian audience. Of course, now I was thinking, this was mostly like college students, secondary school students. But I think even for even for working professionals, this is critical as well. So, but like when I say a value shift, I mean I think in terms of like where you want to put your energy, right? So again, if you remember like the slide where I talked about world knowledge, right? Like in a world where you have machines that pretty much know everything about everything, then maybe there's not so much value in you remembering the formula, you know what I mean? Or being able to define, some terms, or like just anything that's just like, that's just like rote learning, and it's just like, that you don't really, like there's no deep understanding. I mean, like you're not going to be able to add any value because someone can just ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and it will just tell them that, right? And again, like same to like in your professional setting, right? Like if you're just thinking about the workflow and just like executing the workflow, then the value is shifting because very soon, or even now, AI is just going to do those things anyway. So the question then is like where's the value you add? So again, I think if you're in school, secondary school, college, which I know like back in my days, there's a lot of like people just trying to memorize stuff and they don't really understand. Even when I was in uni in Nigeria, a lot of people like did computer science and they couldn't write a line of code, and they still had good grades. Like, I mean, I think if you could survive then, you definitely won't survive now because like computers already writing most of the code now. So like, so the real value is not even knowing how to write code. Like I think it's still good to know the right code, but it's really like, it's the deep understanding of the domains of the, of the problem space and sort of how you do things properly and critical thinking. Like that's really where the value is going to be. And I think that's something that, that you want to pay attention to. And then the last thing I just want to kind of talk about in terms of opportunity is like now you can do more with less. I mean, I think this is also one of those again, good and bad things. Like, good in the sense that like now, people have been saying that the next unicorn, the next like billion-dollar company is probably going to be like 2 employees or maybe even 1 employee. And that's because like now with just a bunch of, AI tools, you can start a company. You don't, before, if you have an idea and you can't code, you have to find a friend that can code. And then maybe you find another friend that can do design. And then, oh, actually, now you need to do marketing, you need to go find something. Like, you just needed a lot of people to be, and that's why people have like co-founders and all of that stuff. And I mean, you still need some of those, but like now there's just so much tools that, if you have your idea, if and the right tool, you can go a very long way without even writing a single line of code or without even knowing about so many things, right? By just being aware of the tools, and being able to take advantage of them. So there's just more you can do with less. And, I think the bad side is it also means that, maybe there's not so much jobs now because again, like the computer, again, if you kind of go back to that, like, 10 a night to shift, right? You basically need, it's almost like a, 80, reduction in the amount of human, inputs that you need because the machines can just do, can just do way more. Now, so I think in terms of the skills that I think will be, that matter the most. I mean, they're just some calling like evergreen skills that I think everyone should develop. And I think these are not script. These are not skills that you master and it's done. It's just skills you want to continue to work on for the rest of your life. And I think one is just critical thinking. I mean, this is just like I have two boys. For me, this is probably the most important thing above all else. It's just like you need to be able to think critically. And this is like, how do you even solve problems? How do you break problems down in a methodical, structured way? You know what I mean? And because this again, this is and again, like if you think about your role, if you are an administrator, if you're a program analyst, if you are a, like insurance person, like can you think about the problem that your customers have? Can you think about the problem that your company has and think about it critically, like, like critically to kind of understand like, like what are the factors contributing to the problem? Is it, is it solvable? What do you need to solve it? If you're willing to solve it, how do you like validate that you've solved it? What are the right metrics? Like those kind of skills are just evergreen. It doesn't matter what if it's AI, if it's something else in the next, 50, 60, 100 years, that's always going to be critical. And then obviously, creative problem solving, right? This is where again, you're leaning on your experience, which is something I think, maybe, AI is not even quite good at yet today. Maybe there will be at some point, but I think, the creative problem solving is still, I think, it's a skill that's going to be, evergreen. And then at the end of the day, you still have to work with people, right? So how do you work with people? How do you build a relationship? Again, we're talking about, my experience with, Dr. Orlando, right? Again, I think, I think I'm here today because I had a good working relationship with him, even though we haven't seen in what, like 14, 15 years. I think it just speaks to how it's important to be able to build lasting relationship with people because I think, these are just skills that are gonna, serve you well for the rest of your life. And, and like to be frank, I've seen a lot of like young Nigerians and even, during my time when I was, working at G4V and a bunch of other companies that I worked on where, worked that way, people just don't, people don't, people just want to do the bare minimum to just get a paycheck and they don't have a sense of ownership and they don't take responsibility. Like those things again, like it doesn't matter how much AI you know or not know, that's not going to serve you very well, right? So again, like these are just skills that are, evergreen that I think everyone, including myself, you need to continue to pay attention to. And then, they're just some like basic skills. Again, like this is not, this is not going to turn you into, an AI researcher and like, get you a $50 million job, for example, right? But I think these are skills that I would say they're like just table stakes that I think everyone should start to develop. It's just, the same way if you find someone that can like, I guess do a Google search, you'll be like, what, like, is everything okay? You know what I mean? Or I don't know, someone that can like send an email or, like, or just even use like, or fill a form online. And these are just like basic things that I think we kind of expect pretty much everybody to be able to do. I remember even growing up, I used to teach people like, Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint and teaching people how to use things like MS-DOS and just how to use Windows, like because at the time those were just skills we wanted people to know, right? You able to like type on a computer and print and do all of that stuff, right? Which again now it's like it's kind of table stakes, right? Expect someone to be able to kind of use Mac or use Windows or browse the internet and all of that stuff. So I think with AI, right, just knowing the basics, what is AI, what is ML, like what do these things mean? What are the types of models that you have, what does a classification task mean versus a generative task? And, when people say, agentic AI, what does that mean? When they say, tool calling, MCP, like, again, you don't need to like be expert in these things, but just knowing high level what they are. I think it just allows you to then be able to evaluate and say, okay, for this problem that I have, is this the right AI tool for me? You don't have to be the one building that tool, right? The same way, we're using Zoom, we didn't have to code Zoom, right? Because someone else did that, and that's fine. So I think that's very important, right? I think the second one is like prompting or just prompt engineering, which I think this is actually super cool because which is I think one of the other things that I think opens up the opportunity where a lot of these models, you don't even, like they just speak English, right? Or they speak natural language, whatever language you speak, hopefully we can start to, have models. And I actually, like I work with a few companies in Africa who are building models that let you use like native language, pidgin, Hausa, Yoruba, and so on and so forth. But essentially, it's nice that they just use natural language, right? So pretty much anybody can just use them, right? So it's not like you have to go learn some like foreign language, like a coding language, to be able to use it. And that's basically what prompting is, right? Prompting is like just how do you give the model a good enough instruction for it to get something done, right? So that's I think that's a skill everybody should have. And it's not super difficult to start to train yourself. You can just a lot of this, companies all have like free chatbots. You can just start using them, and start figuring out how do you actually talk to this thing? How do you, like you see a lot of people still using ChatGPT or any of this, LLMs, like the Google search, or they're just doing like single shots, when you can have pretty robust, again, this is where the fluency comes in, knowing what like a context window is. So like how much tokens you can actually put in the thing, and and knowing things like RAG and how do you, like augment the context. So again, these are not super difficult things. These are just like basic things that if you know, you'll be surprised how much you can actually get of the models without, without like being super technical. Evaluation is another big one. I mean, and some of these are like, again, I'm talking pretty high level, you can go pretty in depth in some of this stuff, and like just, you're like at Google, have people who just do evals, who build tools for evals and run evals. A huge part of my job is actually like doing evals. And so, like there's a lot of depth to this stuff. But essentially it's just like, when I say eval, it's just like, how do you know the model is doing the right thing, right? So again, like, if you work in a bank and you were trying, you're trying to figure out how can we use AI to like improve insurance or lending or whatever. Like you need to be able to evaluate that the model is actually doing the right thing, right? Because you don't want to get fired either, right? Like you don't want to build AI that's actually not doing the right thing and it's going to be giving people loans. You shouldn't give them, of course. Most banks will have controls that ensure that doesn't happen. But again, like at the high level, you need to start building the skills to understand how do I do evals, how do I construct, like a ground truth, like a data set. And again, these are pretty basic stuff that, you can read up online, you can watch videos in like 10 minutes and kind of get the gist. But like I think that's just, and then again, I would say another, table stake skill that I think you all should learn. And then tool integration, right? This is the fun, easy part. This is just like knowing what tools is available. How do you, orchestrate multiple tools together, which is also where some of the magic comes in. How can you take one, like build your own, prototype and connect it to something else or link it to a data source, right? And again, like a lot of these tools don't actually require you, writing code. Of course, like the more complex things you want to do, maybe the more, you might need to write code. But the good thing is, if you like, even if you have to write code, you can tell the LLM to write the code for you, right? So, so like in a way, it's almost like magical, where like, like you just even know you just need to know the questions to ask and how to ask it, right? A lot of time, the LLM can actually do, most of the work for you. All right, so wrapping up on the final section. So let's talk about locking now. So I've sort of given you guys a landscape of just like, like where we are. I've talked about, just what the implications are for like, like the future in terms of, I think the skills you should focus on, skills you definitely want to let go, right? If you don't really understand your domain properly, because domain expertise is going to be critical. If you're just kind of following the routine and just like memorizing stuff, or like then, like AI is going to know everything, right? Like, like any topic, any domain, AI is going to know that more than anybody. So like, if people can just ask AI to get the answer, then definitely they don't need you, right? So, so you need people to deliver more value than AI, or at least, in partnership with AI. All right, so let me leave you guys with, maybe just some concrete things for how I think you can all prepare yourself for the future that we're all heading toward. So let's talk about like the new learning mindset. I'll give you like a framework to think about your career, some practical step, big picture, and then I'll leave you with some resources and we can do Q&A. All right, so the new learning mindset, right? So, like lifelong learning is not, it's not a new thing, right? It's a word that's been around for a very long time. And this is basically just like a desire to get better, right? A desire to like always learn, a desire to always be a curious. Like again, these are like evergreen things. I think, they're not fads. They were true 100 years ago. They are true today. They'll be good, they were true for the next 1,000 years. So as I was just talking about like, domain knowledge, I think domain knowledge is actually, in fact, like I was having a chat with a few folks a while ago, and I was saying to them, like, from like a product standpoint, I'm like, like maybe domain knowledge is actually, it's the thing that's the key ingredient. Because again, like if you have AI that can kind of do most of the work, then it's really someone that can give it the right context. Well, where does context come from? Well, context comes from the domain knowledge. It's really understanding what information does the AI need, and how do you guide the AI to actually do the work? Because like it doesn't matter what like AI you have, at least today, right? Maybe until we get to AGI, but like at least today, like AI itself is not going to do anything for you. Someone has to be able to like tell it and guide it and like give it instruction it needs to do anything. And if you don't really understand your problem space, again, like whichever industry, that you're in, for example, I see, Fatima was talking about like, yeah, how can we, I think she works in judiciary, right? And how can the court digitize? And that's amazing. I actually have a friend of mine here in the US who is the head of IT for, I think, one of the local courts here. And, I think they've been looking into like stuff like this as well. But again, like, yeah, you really need to understand like, well, okay, like what does the end-to-end customer journey for, for the judiciary look like? Like, where are the bottlenecks? What does the current process look like? Do you have metrics to quantify, where the gaps are? If you were to design a new system, like what would that look like? What information do you need? What is lacking? What is static? What changes? Of like you need that deep knowledge. Then you can then give that to AI, and have AI kind of work magic for you. But like for example, if you just had an employee who just like an administrator and they're just kind of going by, they don't even understand the processes, the tools, the people, the constraints. They don't understand like if there's some privacy implications or some legal, and like then you can't really do much because you don't really understand the domain that much. So even like the most powerful AI is not really going to be useful for you because you just, you don't really understand the domain, right? And again, I think this is particularly critical for, again, like if the folks in high school or like in like uni, just don't waste your time memorizing stuff and getting grades. Like, grades are good, but like in the grand school of things, they don't really matter. And I think, like even in where we're going, maybe they don't matter at all because like, again, like I said, like if you have AI that's already like passing PhD level maths, like maybe 99% of the world don't know PhD maths. You know what I mean? So like maybe that's just not a winning strategy to just like it doesn't matter because you can just get the answer from like AI anyway. But what's important is like really knowing the things, really like understanding, like what the concept is, what the implications are when it works, when it doesn't work. And I was doing some interview for some guys a few days ago. And like a lot of when I do interviews, a lot of what I look for is like a trade-off. So I'm not really looking for like maybe for folks who are technical, like in the audience, say, if you're like, if like a front-end developer, for example, like it's not enough that you know React, that you know Next.js or whatever. It's like, I want to understand that you know the trade-offs. Like, when is a technology a good idea or not a good idea? Like, like when does it work? When does it not work? Like, what are the trade? Because that's what really tells me that you understand, right? Just that you've written React code doesn't make you a developer. You know what I mean? Like, you're just someone that can write code. Okay, that's good. But like, like when, like, or you can use state, or again, this I'm getting some technical weeds here, but like, but my point is, I think that's actually more important now than ever because, especially for folks who are like coding, like, AI will just write out the code for you anyway, right? But if for anyone who's actually done this, you realize that like most of the time, that is my experience, a lot of the time, like like the AI writes working code. I can never write good code most of the time. The code again for someone who knows what they're doing, like the code that AI, like the AI writes is not the best code. Like the code is probably going to work, but the architecture is probably wrong. It's not going to scale, right? But if you don't even know that, you're just going to accept and like, okay, that's the code, and then you move on, right? So this is where like really understanding the domain, having deep knowledge, having the right expertise, those are the things that are going to differentiate you. And again, these are like, evergreen. And then I think, kind of, I already talked about this anyway, but like, this is like, like it's also shifting from like what to learn to how to keep learning, because especially for AI, the landscape just changes so much. So like, in an internal group at Google with a bunch of folks who are like working on AI, and this is just people just internally, posting research papers and articles and products, and I can't keep up. Like just the amount of like of just new things that people post every single day, I can't keep up. That's just how, like that's just how you know, like um like rapid the pace of changes. So you have to kind of figure out, and again, I give you guys some very like practical steps, but I think you have to keep out, think about like not just what do I learn, but like how do I keep learning? How do I set up a framework for myself to ensure that, I'm up to date? Because like anything you think is probably going to be relevant in a day or two, definitely, like in a month. So I think again, it really kind of goes back to that, lifelong learning, always staying up to date, and ultimately seeing out that can help you personally in your professional life as well. And then there's like the breadth versus depth. And by this I mean like, again, I keep going back to that like domain knowledge, right? Like now that we have AI that kind of knows about everything, like, this has always been like a very difficult career advice. Like do you go wide, like knowing about many things versus like knowing about one thing? I mean, I think, some of these also like personalities. Like, someone like me, like I've done a lot of things, so which like, yeah, I just get bored. I like to like try different things. But, I think now more than ever, I think it's good to actually maybe go, you know, like wider, kind of know a lot about like a lot of things, because I think that's how you tend to like, that's where the magic lies. Like I think most of the magic lies in being able to like connect things and being able to bring concepts, across domains. So again, like, like in your career, you still want to have some deep expertise in a particular area. But I will say like, again, maybe connecting this to you guys already working, like, if you're an admin, maybe knowing a bit about tech is good for you, right? Because now you can suddenly start to do some like really interesting things. Maybe knowing a bit about the operations of a company, knowing a bit, just kind of like, I think the more you know, it just makes you better to even like give the AI the right context it needs to be able to help you. But again, like it doesn't mean that you still, like if you're very technical, you can still, you can grow your expertise. If you like, if you're an administrator, you can still have very deep knowledge about that area or the particular industry that you're in. But, I think more than ever, like having, at least for most people who are not like the top 1%, in their field, I think having a very sort of broad knowledge and just knowing a little about a lot of things, I think it's going to be very useful. And then the last one is just like, again, I talked about like how you can do more with less, and there's low barrier to entry. You should be experimenting, and by that I mean just trying things out, like, yeah, because also too, I mean, and this is something I found just works very well for me. It's like, and I think it's kind of true anyway. It's like the best way to learn is just to do things. I mean, like you have to actually do things to really learn and to understand things. So I think, like if you leave the stock and you don't do anything, you're not gonna like, it's a waste of time, essentially, right? So like you want to take all of this stuff and go like challenge yourself and just do something. Like however simple. Again, I have some like specific steps you can take, but I think it's just try something, take risk. And by risk, I mean just like, try things even if you don't know if they'll work or not. Like that's really how you learn. Like I can give you guys just one story. So like I was kind of fortunate, like when I kind of started in computers early, like thanks to my dad, I like, I think I saw my first computer when I was in like primary school or something, like that was like Windows 3.1. And I kind of just, like growing up, people would say they wanted to be like a doctor or engineer or whatever. Like for me, I knew I was going to be a computer. I was never going to work with computers very early on. But so like, even though I had a lot of like, I'd done some training and like, like I'd done a few things, when I actually like met Dr. Orlando at G4V, I had never worked with SharePoint. I literally like, like I was a Windows guy. Like I knew about Windows servers because I was doing stuff like that. But like I literally I'd never done SharePoint in my life. I didn't even know how the thing worked. And then I was talking to Orlando and it was talking about like, oh, like SharePoint and all this stuff. And I kind of knew, and I kind of knew roughly what it was. But like I remember then, like I had to like, like you have to use the services to like buy books online from the US to like ship to Nigeria because it was so, it wasn't like you could just buy some Microsoft books in Lagos that time. You have to like set up some fake address in the US so they can like it was a mess. But I remember like just like immediately because I knew I was gonna, work with Dr. Orlando at the time. I just bought all this like SharePoint books online, set up VMs on the machine and just started like, like just started learning and just doing the thing. And I think, I think in less than oh, like under a year, I'll probably say I was like in the top 1% like SharePoint guys in Nigeria. I mean, just from just sheer experimenting and just trying things out, which I think you can actually do that today, right? You could just have internet access. I will give you some of these tools. You can just start trying things out and solving your personal problems, your work problems, and that's really how you build your expertise. All right, so I think here are some things. I mean, obviously, like there's never like one way to do things. This is just some thoughts, right? So just take this for what it's worth. But I think like here are some things you can think about in terms of just okay, like how do you think about setting yourself up, right? I think one is you have to figure out what you're kind of good at, right? Like are you a naturally analytical person? Are you like a people person? Are you like a creative? Like everyone kind of has something that they're like, I guess, naturally gifted with. So you should kind of know like what it is that sparks joy for you. Like what are you naturally good at? And that could be the unique human value you bring in. Maybe just naturally, you're just a creative person. You can think about ideas very easily, or you're just very good at like critical thinking, and you're very like logical, and you can kind of break things down, or you're just very technical. So you kind of think about like what that means for you. And then you need to think about, okay, like how do you use AI to kind of enhance your strength? Because I think this is kind of the key, right? I think we've already accepted it, like, or maybe at least, I think I tried to make that clear, like, like AI is here to stay, right? So it's not like it's not going away. It's not like it is here to stay, right? There might be some hype about, what it is, what it's not. And so much of it we actually don't know. But I think what we do know is, it is here to stay. And again, the opportunity is how do you think about how you can actually use this to complement your skills? Okay. And then I think I kind of talk about this as well, because this is critical. Because again, it's day one, lots of stuff changing, a lot of people trying to figure stuff out. So you need to stay close to the party, right? You don't like the party, you don't want the party to be in Lagos and you're kind of in the bush somewhere, you don't know what's happening, right? So you need to kind of figure out like, how do I stay close? Like, am I finding the right people to follow? Am I finding the right mentors? Am I finding, the right friends, the right, local circle? Am I, taking some training programs? But you need to figure out some way to kind of like help you stay up to date. Because if you don't, then you're gonna be left behind, right? And then you need to practice, right? And I think this is what most people don't like, right? If you think of people say like they practice yoga, like you don't do yoga, you practice yoga. Because if you do yoga, you do it once in a year, right? That's not yoga, right? So you have to say you practice because then it's something you do regularly. You see people like who are fit, like it's a workout session, it's a training session, right? Even though it's exercise, but it's training because because you're trying to get better at it, right? It's like it's not something you do like in a day, right? You don't just do it in a day and then that's it. No, it has to be a training regimen, which is like, I'm gonna pick a problem and work on it for a while, and then you learn something, and you pick another problem and then you work on it for a while, and that's how you build your expertise. And then you need to have a network, right? Again, that could be people people you don't know. Again, I was just talking about like a group internally at Google that I joined, which is just part of how I stay up to date. Because again, there's just so much happening that I mean, we all have a life to live, right? It's impossible to kind of just follow everything, but at least just like finding the right channel, whatever that is for you, where you get good information. And again, for a lot of this stuff, you don't even need to know everything in depth, but just knowing, okay, this is not available, this is not possible, or this is, this is not, this is the latest thing. Like usually you'll be surprised how much that differentiates you because a lot of time you have something unique to bring to the table that most people just don't know about. So, here are some practical steps, and I think I'm kind of almost wrapping up. We can start doing questions soon. So, yeah, just some practical steps that I have here. So, if you're a secondary school student, I mean, obviously, there's a question about like everyone wanted to do STEM and do maths and do computer science and do all of that stuff. And there's been people saying maybe nobody needs to learn how to code anymore. I mean, I still think like STEM is still going to be valuable, right? I think if you're doing STEM, engineering, maths, like those are just very strong skills that you get. I think it's gonna be valuable. But I think same with humanities as well, right? Like we still need lawyers. I don't think lawyers are going away. I don't think like doctors are going away or accountants or finance. Like again, like how they work might change. How many of them we need might change, but I think keep your options open, and I think that's fine, right? And obviously, I think people should still learn to code. I mean, I think, yeah, I think you definitely still learn to code. Again, just even like just basic coding skill, basic data skills. I think that's useful. And then, I think obviously just start developing communication. That's key. You have to communicate with humans, and you have to communicate with AI. You have to figure out, how to do both. And then, you just start learning and applying. And also like all of this stuff, even though I group them, based on these like profiles, they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you can be a professional and some of the stuff in the secondary school box is still relevant for you. But I just kind of like, group them that way. If you're a uni student in the audience, I didn't see a lot of folks there, but if you are, I would definitely say, whatever you're studying, definitely try to add some AI and data programs to your major. I mean, even if your school doesn't have a course called AI, find time to like add your own AI course yourself by taking stuff online. Like, when I was in uni back in Nigeria, like most of what I did was just stuff I learned by myself. And I used to have a good friend then where like we would just build software pretty much all the time. And that's how we actually learned a lot of stuff. It wasn't our professors teaching us, it was just stuff that we just did ourselves, right? So, and then I think also like work on real world product as well. I think the more you can start building real things yourself, and that also leads to the next one, which is you start to have a portfolio showing sort of that human plus AI work. And then I think again I talk about like just that breadth perspective, just kind of learning a little bit about a lot of things. I think that's going to help you. If you're just someone who just graduated, right? Again, start to think about like AI tools and getting up to date and learning about them. Find AI related projects that you can volunteer, you can try yourself. Again, it's about just building the skills, building the expertise that then it's almost like that's where you pay it forward, right? Like no one becomes, I don't know, like like a head of AI overnight, right? Like, you kind of have to you know um do the work, right? Essentially. And yeah, I think, like you need to also start building your own presence as well, which is not always easy. I mean, for someone like me, I'm not on social, I don't use social media that much. But again, this is what we live in today, where it's good to just have a way to showcase, the work that you're doing. So if it's a project on GitHub, at least you have a reference where people can actually see that you've done stuff, right? Because it's a lot easier to show people what you've done than to tell them about it. And for folks who are professionals, and it looks like there's a lot of folks like that in the audience, I would definitely say like, be aggressive about AI in your current role, because most likely they like AI won't replace you, but your employer might replace you with someone that can use AI, right? I think so maybe like maybe the risk is not AI itself, it's just someone that can do more with less, right? And that less is gonna be some aspect of AI. So I think really start thinking aggressively about like, how can I use AI? And again, I have some like like I think the next slide or so, some concrete steps that you can take. And then, upskilling, about AIs in your industry, and maybe the industry part is relevant, but also just upskilling about AI tools in general. So just again, knowing what tools is available, what do they do, what are they good at, what are they not good at. I think, those are just things that I think we can help you. Which then I think also helps you with like, being a champion. And again, you don't need a PhD to be the one, championing for AI adoption. Like you don't want to be a Luddite and say like, oh, AI is not good or it's coming for a job. Like, no, like you should be the one championing that for your team. Like how cool would it be if you have a prototype or some demo to show your team and say, hey, like, look at like this thing that I built where like, AI is now, like solving this problem for us, so can, save us X hours a week. I mean, like, I don't know any employer, I think, Dr. Orlando said he's hired folks, about close to 1,000 people. Like, I don't know the employer that you're going to go to and say, I just built this AI thing that maybe saves us 1 million, naira a year, or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to fire you and hire AI. Like, it just doesn't work like that, right? So, I think you definitely want to be the one like championing AI. And I think you do that is by, again, doing those things above, being aggressive, trying to upskill and finding opportunities, that you can use to, to actually apply, AI to solve real problems. And then the last one is, I think I kind of talk about this also from that shift, from the 90-10 to 10-90 shift, right? So again, like whatever you do today, like rethink it from the lens of AI, which is like, if I could have AI do like, even if it's not 90, right? Like even if it's like, if I can have AI do 50, 60, 70, 80% of this workflow, like what would that look like? Again, if I'm in the judiciary and people have to like fill this form, download that form, log into this website and do like just to maybe, I don't know, check on their case or whatever, like maybe that's a lot of things that people are doing. Like, how can I save them time? Or like if my internal team have to like download this thing, enter the data somewhere, upload, send email, like, which is still a lot of work that people are doing, like, which are usually not like super high value work anyway. Like, how can you use AI to like simplify some of that so you can free people up to go do, more impactful things. So this is actually very critical. I think you should all kind of think about, whatever you do at work right now, and think about like giving again all the capabilities talked about earlier. You have computers that can, process text. They can see, things like images. They can process videos. They can generate images. They can generate videos. They can use tools. And by tools, I didn't talk about like things like things like MCP, but essentially like what you can do is like you can have your AI system go browse the internet for you and do research. You can have it basically use tools that any software can use, like call API or stuff like that. So so if you think about like those capabilities, like how can you leverage them to like really optimize and change a lot of the stuff that you do. All right, so you know, I think this is probably our last slide. I think, or maybe close to the last slide. But essentially, again, these are very specific things I want you guys to think about that you can start doing today, right? One is just pick 1 to 3 tools that's relevant for you that you're just gonna try out. I mean, that's just, just this is the doing part, right? Just like first thing, pick 1 to 3 tools. You can say one every month, like my goal every month is I'm gonna try one new tool, one AI tool. I'm not just gonna use ChatGPT every day. Like, there's a lot of them out there. So like I'm just gonna pick a tool every month. I'm gonna try it out and just see, and just see what it does. That's step 1. Step 2, try to solve a personal problem. I think this is very critical. Oftentimes, because your problems better. And when I say problem here, I'm being, like it doesn't have to be like, AI is not gonna pay your rent, right? You know what I mean? But like if there are things that you find boring, yeah, you find kind of just time consuming, maybe you need to like, maybe it's your to-do list, or it's like keeping track of your finance, like, so I have my own personal, you know, um, agent that I use for literally everything in my house. Like it knows the names of my kids, it knows about me, like I have a 4-year-old son, it knows like the progress of my son. So I can tell him, hey, give me an exercise for my son today. It will generate like, questions and exercise. It's basically like my son's lesson teacher, right? Like, because it knows about my son and I've given him all the context and information that he needs. Like, even just recently, my wife and I had to like buy, some furniture for some part of our house. And like I use my agent for that. I asked her, okay, like, this is a picture of my living room. This is what I'm going for. Like, so like it doesn't have to be like super fancy stuff. You just start using it for your personal problems and you'll be surprised because also you kind of build the muscle and ultimately, you can then start taking that and like solving your own, like your work problems, stuff like that. So because again, like you kind of want to use these things, right? You just don't want to read about it. Like you want to bring the actions. I would say, find something very simple that like you want to apply for a job, you want to write a resume, you want to even as simple as like you want to send an email, like try to use AI to like how can I make the email better and stuff like that. Um, so I think that's very important because that's also why you start to really learn, okay, how these things work, what they can do, what they can't do, when it works, when it doesn't work, like you start to build that sort of intuition, if you will. And then I think the third one is like, one like the first two is very basic. You don't have to take any course to do that. You can just start doing that today. Like you don't need any more knowledge. Just you can start doing that today. And then I think as you start doing that, then you can then start to expand your knowledge because basically what you find is as you start solving very simple problems, then you can start thinking, oh, okay, maybe I can actually do this or do that. And you may not know how to make AI do that yet. And that's when You can go take a course. You can maybe work on a bigger project, and you can start to grow your skill set. And then, lastly, we kind of talked about this as part of our framework, which is like, find your way to stay up to date and to learn. So again, this could be like a local community with some friends, or some, online community, or finding seminars that are free or stuff like that. Or if it's a work, sign up for a larger AI project. I mean, every company now is doing AI in some way, shape, or form. Even if you're not in IT, I'm sure if you go to your, to the team and say, hey guys, like, I have some, I have some interest, and this are some things I've done, like I would like to help. I mean, I think most people don't take initiative enough. You know what I mean? Like most people, want, like, they're waiting for permission, waiting for someone to come tell them to come do the thing. And people won't tell you until you've shown that you're capable of doing that. But you can do that if you've kind of done this 1 to 3, right? If you've done, if you use the AI a little bit yourself, if you built, some prototypes are there, you've shown people. When your company is then doing AI and they're looking for people, it may be someone to implement it, but maybe someone to give feedback, or someone to be like a tester or whatever. Like you can contribute, in some way, shape or form. All right. So big picture. I mean, no one knows the future, right? So I'm not here claiming I know the future. I think again, AI is coming for everybody. We're all going to figure this out. That's one. I think the second thing is this space is moving just incredibly fast. I mean, I'm fortunate to, like, work in, in a company that's at the frontier. And even I can't keep up. There's just so much happening every day, not just in like in one company, but I think across the world, that is just, it's impossible for, any single person to know everything going on. I think the third point is like, this is like, this is a fact that AI is going to change society. Like how much, how positive or negative, who is going to benefit more or less, like that's all TBD. But, it is going to impact everybody. That's just, there's no running away from that. And then, but again, it doesn't really matter so much, because at least at a minimum, what we can do is focus on what you can control, which is you can be ready, you can be adaptable, and you can take actions to shape the future that you want, right? And again, by using some of the frameworks, some of the things that we've talked about, you can at least position yourself to think about whether, it's a current job that, that you have, whether it's even some idea you have to start a company. Because again, maybe you want to start a company, you think you need the money, you need, I can't code. Well, maybe you don't need to code anymore, because there's so many tools that you can build your idea, and now people, start to use it without even, writing like a single line of code. So I think, there's a lot of things that you can definitely do to be ready and to kind of be prepared for whatever the future might bring, which again, we do not know. I'm sure the slides are going to be provided to you all. These are just, I mean, again, there's just so many resources. I just put a few of the ones that I use quite a lot. I think, and I also try to just, bucket them. This is this is not in any way exhaustive, but just in a few things that I want to point out. Maybe I'll just highlight a few in different categories. I will say, deeplearning.ai is a good resource that everybody should go. One of the nice thing is, this is by, Andrew. He is probably one of the godfathers of like AI, and he was one of the co-founders for Coursera, and he's been championing just AI for a long time, and just AI education in general. So I think deep learning AI, like I have taken courses there, and the good news is a lot of them are actually free. They have the short courses. It's also a way to also stay up to date, because essentially, so what happens right now is when you have all these new companies, especially the startups who are building new products, of course, they need people to know about that product. So one of the things they do is they create a short course so that people can take it for free, and then that way they can come use the product. So if you go to deep learning AI, they have from like just what is AI to like, I've taken some like pretty, advanced, specialization courses there. But then they also have like just like, very simple free courses to just learn evals or learn, agents and blah, blah, blah. So, definitely a super useful resource for folks to take a look at. And then I think the other ones are just, again, I already talked about some of these companies who are like really leading the space, obviously Google, OpenAI, Anthropic. Again, similar to, what I said, a lot of those companies have an incentive to like essentially teach people for free. In fact, was it Microsoft or someone that announced that they were going to train like, I don't know, train 1 million people in the US to use AI, or like invest in, some millions of dollars or whatever, So like, because basically like all these companies have an incentive to get people to use their products. It's just, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's how some of us learned. When I was in Nigeria, like Google will, they would organize like a developer fest every year and just trying to get people to like use their APIs and all of that stuff. So, you should take a note of that, right? So just go to like all of the sites, and usually they will all have like, not usually, they do have, which these are links I've put there. They all have some of the free resource that teaches you about AI in general, but also like how to use their own particular product. But I think the Google one is particularly good. You can learn a lot for free. It's out there. You can take, you can take advantage of it. For like vibe coding, again, I didn't really talk. There's so many things I didn't talk about, but like, but basically, like, vibe coding these days is a concept from when, like you're building software, but you're not really like writing code, right? You don't even, sometimes you don't even look at the code. You're just telling the AI what you want, and AI is like building it for you. That's kind of what vibe coding is. And Lovable is like one of the, I would say, one of the, poster child in the driving space. Again, there's a lot of products here. There's Firebase, there's Bolt, there's Cursor. If you want more, if you're actually a bit more technical, there's, anything you can do things like automation and stuff like that. But Lovable is a good place to start. I would say everybody should go to Lovable. A lot of the companies will have like free tiers where you can kind of just, play with it for free. You don't have to pay, at least, for some time, or, for some level of things you do. But again, it's, go to Lovable, just, come up with an idea, just try it out. Again, it does give you a sense of like what, again, if you see vibe coding, like, what is vibe coding? Well, you can just go do it yourself. It's not rocket science, just go and like build me, I don't know, a calculator, build me a website that does this. You can just try it out, right? So I would definitely say check that out. On the content creation side, again, if you need graphics, if you need images, there's a lot of like, again, like the Nano Banana from, that we wrote out of Google recently is like super amazing. There's Midjourney if you want to generate videos and images. There's UX Pilots. Again, if you want to design something, but you don't know how to use Figma, you're not a designer, UX Pilot will design stuff for you. You just tell it in English what you wanted to do, and it will just go do it for you. There's Canva, there's all of this other product that do videos, images, all of that stuff. And then like just on the productivity, just research side of things, which again, this is like just like the chatbot, just general day-to-day question and task. Again, there's Gemini, there's Notebook LM, which is amazing. So like, say you have like, I don't know, if an article or a book or whatever that you don't understand, you can upload it to the thing and just ask the questions, and it will tell you the questions. You can have it, create a podcast so you can listen to it, when you're stuck in traffic or whatever, or you're going for a run. Obviously, there's ChatGPT. I'm sure everyone has used that. There's Claude. There's Manos. Manos is pretty amazing, actually. It's actually one of those chatbots that's also very, agentic. You can tell it to do stuff, build stuff for you, do research. Just some ridiculous things you can do with Manos. There's Grok. Grok is the one by XAI. It's actually pretty good as well. There's Perplexity. So again, this is not even remotely close to like all of the things that I believe. But I just wanted to leave you guys with just some place to get started. I would definitely say, maybe, off this list, definitely use, try, and also, if you use ChatGPT, try the other ones as well. I use Claude personally, but I also use Gemini personally and for work as well. It's amazing. But, there's a lot of this stuff out there. And you can also start to even see the differences, like what are they good at? How do they communicate? Like, which one is more, is more, personable, like how do they respond, and so like it just gives you a sense of like all of the different ways that these LLMs work. Lovable, I think everybody, this is my challenge. Try build something. um I think at least it'll give you a sense, and you can brag to your friends that you've done vibe coding, because it's as simple as that. Just, whatever it is, simple website or whatever. Just build something. And again, I think you really start to get a sense of, oh, okay, this is what it looks like, this is what people are talking about. And then, on the lens side, definitely check the deep learning AI as well as Google, link. Lots of free resources that you can, start to use to increase your knowledge in this space. And yeah, I think that's everything I have for you guys. Thank you so much. And like I said, it's really such an honor to be here. That's my LinkedIn, and my email address. Folks can reach out to me. I am happy to help folks in any way that I can. All right. So question, let's see.
Thank you very much, Tola. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I've tried to put together some of my questions and some of the ones that people have asked me. some of the people who are here on the call, and even some people who kind of are not here but already knew that you were going to take this, and said, okay, please get him to speak about some of these things. I had to type them out. I had them scribbled, but I typed them out. So yeah, so take a stab at them. I mean, just share your thoughts and your opinion. And if you need clarification for any of them, please, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, doctor. Thank you so much. All right, so let's start with the first one, vibe coding, its value, applicability. So, I mean, I think the biggest value for vibe coding is prototyping. It's just like, how do you quickly get the concept, like basically, get an idea from like concept to like something real, right? And again, it's really about like what is unlocked, right? I think, for like folks like me, I'm like, well, like I'm technical. I've been doing this for a very long time. Like, like even as a PM, just because I can, right? I can just build stuff myself and show my engineers, even though like, I used to be an engineer, but like for the past, I don't know, decade, I haven't been an engineer. Like I lead teams that build product. But because I've been an engineer myself, a lot of times I can just build stuff and just give my engineers, hey, this is what we should do. But not everyone has that skill, right? And I think like the huge value of vibe coding is the fact that like, I mean, pretty much anyone now, if you have an idea in your head, you can make it concrete. You can just tell the AI to just build a thing for you like in like minutes, which before you either couldn't do at all, but even if you can do it, it's gonna take you weeks or months. I would say that's the biggest value. Just how quickly can we and that's it also goes back to the experimentation thing I said where like, a lot of time you have an idea, you don't even know if it's gonna work. And the sooner you can build something quickly, you can start to test it, you can show people, you can get feedback. I think it's valuable. But it can also be valuable to actually build something for real, right? Like, so it's not just for building product, even though a lot of what you see, especially for the ones like Lovable, where like it's mostly like, you're not seeing the code, you're just telling the AI to do the thing. I think for mostly simple enough things, you can get very far. I think as your use case start to get complicated, then you probably need to see the code at some point. At least that's what I've seen. Like you need to see the code at some point. I think, that's where maybe you can like say non-technical person can like get the prototype far enough, and then you can hand it over to engineers who can then use a combination of like still vibe coding as well as actually writing code, but the AI is doing most of the coding, and then they can kind of come in and like, because sometimes the AI gets stuck, and someone who actually knows what they're doing has to go in and kind of get the AI or like fix the issue, or the AI is not doing anything the right way. So I think that's really what the value is, and I think everybody now should be using some form of vibe coding. Like I also use Cursor the most. Like I've used pretty much all of them, but just because again, for me, I'm pretty technical for the things that I do. I kind of want to see the code and like sometimes like just walk with the code a little bit. So I find that like Cursor to me is a good, like it's good enough because I can still tell it like what I wanted to do. You can write most of the code, but I can then kind of steer it to like make changes and stuff like that. But again, there's a lot of the stuff where you don't see the code, but they all give you a way to see the code if you do want to see the code. So I think biggest value is going to be just reducing that time to market. How quick can I even get something from an idea to like have a product I can show somebody, versus like finding engineers, writing documents, and doing all of that ceremony. So that's really the gist of vibe coding. I think for the second question, AI product development methodology approach. I mean, so like there's some things that's actually not that new in the sense that like for folks that have been doing AI ML for a very long time, like in terms of like like identifying the problem, figuring like doing some kind of quick prototype, figuring out like how you do your evaluation. Like evals is very key. I mean, this has been key for like the days we're doing just like traditional machine learning, and it's just the same when you're doing LLMs, and even more so, just because you have this AI doing more generative tasks, it's highly non-deterministic. You need able to be able to do evals because there are a lot of cases where you have the AI maybe like it's good 10% of the time, but that's good if it's just a demo, like it's a prototype. It's something that you're going to put in front of like real users or companies are going to pay for. Like the thing has to work like 99% of the time. And you also need to be able to like improve the quality and do like hill climb. Essentially you can't do that if you don't have a good set of metric, a good set of eval set. So thinking about like how do I even get some like good data set. So let me just give you guys a good example, right? Let's say you want to build an AI that would, I don't know, maybe like, suggests an insurance product to somebody. Well, for you to even know if that AI is going to work, you need to be able to even be able to give it like some very simple use case, like maybe like come up with some information about, okay, this is the user, this is, maybe their current relationship with the bank, like they have a home or they have a car, but you need to be able to give you some information, and then you also need to have a sense of like what the response should be, right? So you need to have some form of ground truth. And ground truth, I mean like what you know is already like a good answer, right? So maybe that's pretty basic. So you need to start with that and see, just for that simple use case, can the AI do that correctly? But then, even if the AI does that correctly, that's not going to be enough, because that's just one case, right? You need to be able to then come up with all that kind of, eval set. So maybe someone has a more complicated scenario. Maybe some case where the data is, like is not a complete, or stuff like that, right? So you need to be able to come up with all of those eval sets. And, some of that could be, using AI to also do synthetic data, where you're using AI to generate the data set for you. Or if it's a big company, you have access to like historical data, you can use some of that as well. Or you're thinking about privacy concerns and stuff like that. So and then like once you have that, you can then do like an eval where you basically just run the AI across all of those outputs and see where it does well, see where it doesn't do well. And that's when you then start to think about, okay, is it like a context problem? Do I just need to give you more context? I need to like do more prompt engineering, or is that just something fundamentally wrong with the model? Do I need a bigger model? Because then again, all these models have like different. Some of them are light, where they optimize for speed. Some of them are more robust, where they'll be more expensive and take more time to run. So like it's really from this doing this eval that you sort of figure out, like, is this even good enough? Is it solvable? Can it get to production quality? When the AI doesn't do well, what's the loss pattern, and how do we fix that? So that's essentially like what that development approach is like. Of course, depending on the particular use case, it might vary a bit, but at a very high level, it's like, what's the problem? Like what's the most basic sort of data set that we can use to even kind of do like a quick just sanity check that AI can actually be useful here. And then, from then, okay, how do you do more evals to really figure out like, like where the losses are, and then figuring out, okay, do we need more data for context? Do we need to change our prompts? Do we need to do some post-processing, and so on and so forth? So that's basically, what that looks like. And in terms of like AI evaluation tools for QA people, I mean, this is, again, there's a lot to
So,
say
so
because,
do you
okay, go on.
so
Yeah.
Tyler, do you have recommendations for both 2 and 3, like specific tools, maybe just 1 or 2, just like those ones that you shared in the second to the
Yeah,
last
I
slide?
do. I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I can send. Yeah, I think what I can do is I can send a few of those, because it also depends on like what kind of evals. I was also going to say it depends on what kind of evals that you're trying to do. So, for example, like there are platforms that do like safety eval. So like if your focus is really just like to do safety evals, and by safety I mean like making sure that that your AI is not saying either like abusive things, or is grounded, that is like, for example, let's say you were building a chatbot for like a bank, right? Maybe you don't want the AI to be saying things about your competition, right? You don't want the AI to be answering like random questions or saying things that's false, right? So that's some form of eval where it's not so much about like the accuracy, it's just like, is it safe? It's not costing people, is it saying things actually factual, right? So there's a lot of tools there, and that, and I will send a list of those, after the call, that you can use. But then there's also just like quality evals where like, and then even then too, there's a question of, sometimes you need a tool to like generate data. There's a lot of companies, like out there in the space that would actually help you generate, you know, a data set if you don't have one. So there's sort of tools that can send you, a few links, and then there's actually running the, evals themselves, right? And then being able to get the right analysis, and the metrics. So it really just kind of depends on what kind of eval you're doing. And like most of the platforms will have a tool that can kind of do a combination, of them. There's actually one, I forget the name now. There was one that was founded by a CMU professor. They do actually have a course on that deep learning dot other AI sites that I linked, that kind of talks about basically they give you a framework to do evals. And like a lot of the of the huge platforms like LangChain also give you like built-in tools to do you know, evaluation as well. So this again just depends on like what like what specific type of eval are you doing. But I think there's a lot of tools, and like I can send a few of those
Okay.
links afterwards.
All right.
All right.
You also
Okay.
okay. You also
Go.
remember when we used to think about doing like a news aggregation site that can just aggregate news specifically to Nigeria, or something that is just aggregating events in Africa, maybe everywhere where somebody's slapping somebody or where there's a small riot. How useful or valid are these kinds of use cases, and also how easy is it to actually get them done?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I think there are two questions that obviously, this is sort of my bread and butter in terms of like as a product guy, right? So, I think there are two questions, kind of two high-level strategic questions, right? I think in terms of like how valuable is it, that's really not an AI or technical question. That's just a product market fit question, right? It's like, is the problem people care enough about to be solved. And like that's a question where there are sort of approaches to kind of systematically validate that and know if that's just, it's a good use case or not. It doesn't matter whether it's AI or not. So that's one problem. Now, there's the other question of like, can you actually build this, from a technical standpoint, and how can, AI help you? I think if you were to build like a news aggregation or like local event, there's a huge part of that you wouldn't need AI for necessarily. Of course,
Right.
today you probably use AI across the stack, if you will. But like, because if you kind of break this down again, like at the eye level, right? You need a way to like ingest the news, right? So you need to figure out a way like how you actually get the news. Are you gonna crawl the web? Are you gonna, integrate to like a partner using API? Is it gonna be a push or pull? Or are you gonna get the news from them, or are they gonna push it to you? So like there's some just the standard technical stuff that you have to figure out in terms of how do you build that. But now there's like maybe what you can use, AI for is like ideally you want to have some form of taxonomy, right? You want to know, okay, this is news about politics, this is news about science, about sports, is that, like, which if you don't have AI, that would be, that would be extremely difficult to do. In fact, I used to lead teams that have done stuff like that, where like, like you can, if you think about Etsy, I used to, lead the knowledge graph team at Etsy, and for those that don't know Etsy is like an e-commerce site where you can go buy stuff, and like we need to know like is this an apparel? Is it a furniture? Is it outdoor? And even that, like, what kind of furniture is it? Is it handmade? And like, you need all those attributes. And that's, like, we literally had like a taxonomist whose job was to come up with those stuff. So, but again, that's going to be very difficult, very expensive to do. So that's where like AI could help you, because you could just have AI aggregate it for you. You could have AI generate a summary for you. So maybe before you needed a lot of people to like, because obviously like you don't want to take the news and just push the news out, right? Because then maybe you're not adding so much value. Maybe what you want to do is like you might want to have a digest and say, actually, just summarize the news for me and tell me like the things I need to know about. Like, these are the 5 main things happening. Or maybe like I only care about sport news. I only care about news in like Lagos, or news that's in Lagos that's about tech, right? So there might be different ways people want to consume it, and AI can absolutely help you. And you can even do like super fancy things. So again, if you use something like Notebook LM, where right now if you just take your news, you can put it in a Notebook LM, it can generate a podcast for you. So someone want to say, I don't want to read news, I just want to like listen to the news. Now, of course, how if you don't have AI, how would you do that, right? Like that would be so, you have to probably pay people to like listen to the news and then create an arc or podcast. I mean, that wouldn't scale, right? Maybe you could do that once, once a month, right? But you can automate that entire thing with like, AI today, where you like, get the news, you feed the news to the AI can just create a podcast. You can just automatically, share the podcast to people, they can listen to it, right? So those are the ways that you can use AI. Of course, I talk about some of the just technical stuff. Of course, you can use AI to just write the code to like crawl the
Yeah.
web, ingest the news and all of that stuff. So I think,
Yeah.
you can use AI across the stack. But I think, for the first question of like, is it going to be useful as a thing? That's just a product question. And again, you run
Okay.
experiments, you do research, you can figure out like if that's something people actually do care about, if that makes sense.
Okay, right. So, and I like one of the things you said, like where you were like, okay, do I really need AI for this particular solution, or is it just my normal application? Because it's not everything that actually requires AI. And so, if you look at the next question, are we going to see where ERPs, core banking, those types of things will be fully AI, or will for the far future will they just be platforms that have AI features? And I mean, there's definitely a difference between those two things. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, doctor, this is the question. I mean, like this is, this is the question that the entire industry is thinking about. I can tell you that for a fact. So, I mean, I think the way it is right now is which is kind of how technology tends to be adopted, right? It's like usually everyone kind of bolts on AI or just bolts on the new thing to what they have. I mean, I think the best, like analogy is if you think about the like the a mobile wave, right? And you were in the mix of all this stuff, right? Like what did companies do? They just basically took their website and they made it smaller, right? Like, that was what people did, right? Like, they wanted to like build for mobile and they just took the website, designed for large screen and they just made it smaller, right? That was just that, which was the obvious thing to do. And then, over time, mobile first became a thing, right? People start to build like mobile native and mobile optimized experiences. And I think it's basically the same thing for AI, where like a lot of companies, like including Google, like are basically taking AI and like, adding it to existing products, right? Because that's just a natural place you start for technical reasons, but also for like just user experience reasons. Because a lot of time too, like you don't want to like imagine if you're SAP and you just put a chat button for people. I mean, people probably go crazy because they're like, no, I used to click this thing to give me this report. Now I just have a chat. Like it takes people time to even kind of get up to speed as well. So yeah, so my sense is for the medium to short term, I mean, we're going to continue to see a lot of that. It's just it also just takes time to like build things from ground up and like again as I was saying about like just rethinking what does an AI first core banking app look like or an AI first CRM looks like. I mean that's just just the difficult things to do. And I think this is also where disruption comes in, right? Because especially for like for the incumbent companies, there's like the classic innovators dilemma, right? Where for them it's kind of in a way it's hard for them to just disrupt themselves. And I think that's where you have all these like AI native companies who are obviously because they are starting, starting from scratch, they can just build a thing AI first. And I think, for example, if you saw the announcement from like OpenAI with their agentic commerce and like partnership with like Shopify and all of this stuff and Stripe for you to just like buy things from like ChatGPT. So I think yeah, I think in the short term it's definitely going to be more like an AI features, but I think inevitably it is going to start to change where you will start seeing more like AI first experiences. And if I was just going to give you guys, like maybe like a valuable insight, and I kind of talked about this, right? I think this also, for people who are more technical in nature, like this will also change the way we build features. So if you think about like an ERP, there's an API somewhere where you click and then the API like does something. I think what's going to happen is all those APIs are just going to be agents. I mean, again, they will become a more, in fact, for folks who are technical, if you think of things like MCP, MCP is kind of technically just a wrapper on an API. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, obviously it's like more than that, right? There's discovery aspect of it, but like at the end of the day, it's just an LLM calling a function. I mean, that's really it's as simple as that, right? Like at the core, that's just what it is. So, but what's going to happen is eventually, I think this is where the true like AI agents is gonna come true is when a lot of these apps get rebuilt as like agents because now what's then gonna happen is you can then have a bunch of agents talking to themselves to get things done, right? So today instead of you having to like click this button that causes API and then I mean it's almost like remember like the old service-oriented architecture and all this like ideas of old, they're kind of coming back in some way where like essentially what's gonna happen is pretty much every company will not like they won't just have features that are backed by APIs. Each feature will basically be its own agent. So that way you can just say, I want to like generate a report for last, for like Q3 or whatever. You just type that, and then the agent knows, okay, needs to talk to another agent to go like, export the report. You need to take that report, take it to another agent that maybe summarizes it, take it to an agent that kind of like does the checks, and like, which maybe today you have to click 5 buttons or click 6 buttons, whatever, right? Or export and import, like, but they will all be wrapped as agents, and the agents will just talk to themselves, and ultimately, like, you just get your response.
Okay.
Ultimately that's where the industry is going, but I mean that's going to take a while because it's really for the big companies. There's just a lot at stake for them to like change the entire paradigm overnight. Like, that's not, yeah. So I think some of that's going to
Yeah.
be, like smaller companies pushing them to do it. And then, like, some of them will do it or some of them won't, and they will get replaced by people that do. But that's essentially what's going to
All right.
happen.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ola.
Yeah.
So very quickly, so that we can do, so you can just quickly take six. I know you've got your thoughts. I've got Muiwa here and a couple of people who are thinking that would we ever get to the point where, our entire sales and marketing team will be driven by agents. And then you can also quickly speak about seven and eight. Like, if some of the people here are hoping one day they'll be like you, they can apply to Google. What will be the expectations, both from a business analyst and a developer perspective? And I'm looking forward to number nine at some point in time. Now, someday, well, is that feasible? So yeah, please go ahead,
Okay.
Dala.
Yeah. So maybe very quickly. So I think for six, I mean, short term, would they replace it entirely? I don't think so. I think it also depends on what kind of marketing. If you're doing telemarketing, I think AI can probably just replace you today entirely. But like if you're doing marketing or sales, I mean, it also depends on like what kind of sales, like what's your sales channel. Like if your sales is something that requires, like physical connection. For example, like if you're like a real estate agent, I don't know, selling $1 million house, AI is probably not going to replace you anytime soon because no one is going to buy a house just by chatting with an agent. They need to talk with somebody, right? So like everything is all context based, right? It just depends on what exactly are you doing, like what domain are you, But I think again, what is definitely clear is AI is going to do more of what you're doing, and you should actually be using AI for what you're doing. So like if you're doing a marketing, for your creatives, like if it's taking you, I don't know, 2 weeks before to come up with creatives because you have a designer that needs to go generate some design, like yeah, maybe you're not doing something right. Like AI should be doing that, right? Even like if you're thinking about like how you're doing targeting, you're customizing, like you should be using AI for those things, your copy and like yeah, so you should be using AI for those things. And I think like you definitely don't need an army anymore, right? If you had 10 people before, you can probably either do the same level of output with like 4 or 5, or at least expectation should be that that team should be doubling or tripling, their output just because they have AI that can do, like a lot of things. But I think, yeah, I think short term is AI going to replace everybody and send them away? I don't think so. Like the truth of the matter is, as powerful as AI are today, they're just not like, they're just not there yet. I think they're getting, like yeah, like incredibly powerful by the day, but like you're not gonna have an AI run your marketing team today. That's just not, that's not gonna happen. I think for 7 and 8, I will just give a general answer because I mean, yeah, I can like I'll give a general answer, which is so like I think over the years, I mean, I can't count how many folks that I've recommended, like I've given, like a referral to either for software engineering job, for like product management job, for whatever that they can't get a job at Google, and and I think ultimately it comes down to kind of what I said earlier, which is like most people really just don't understand what they do. And like I kind of say this in a like most people don't. Like you might have someone who's like, I've been coding for like 7 years, but like they don't really understand engineering. They just write code, right? You're not gonna like you will get a job as an engineer in some companies. You're not gonna get a job as an engineer at Google or Meta or any of these top companies. It's just not gonna happen because like if you come to Google to get a job as a developer, they just like at least back in the day before COVID, I think they're even doing that now. They go walk into the office, you do a phone call, blah blah blah. They just give you a whiteboard and they give you a marker and they ask you a question. Like, that's what interviews used to be like. So it's not like you're looking on the white screen and a board and you have to write code. So like there's no like nobody's asking you what is Java. They don't even care what language you use. It doesn't matter because what they really care about is like is your problem solving, is your critical thinking, is the deep understanding of the domain, and it's basically the same across whatever the role is. So if a business analyst, just because you've learned some Excel or you've learned some Python or like whatever, you have CBAP, Dr. Landy, as you know, I used to do a lot of certifications. I had like, I had like a gazillion of them. And, for the companies that I worked at, they just don't care. Like, of course, I'm not saying those things are not useful. They're absolutely useful. But like, I think like at the really top level, it doesn't really matter for the most part because sometimes those things can just be a mask for incompetence, essentially. Like, if people think they're like NCP or whatever, but like, yeah, I mean, again, if you're working for like a tier C, tier D company, whatever, like maybe they just hire you because you have Java certified or whatever. But like, but for Google, they don't care so much because we have a proprietary language anyway. So they probably like it doesn't really matter. Like I've worked at different companies that use different. So I think ultimately it's just you just want to be really you want to have a deep understanding of the thing and just it's a critical thinking. I think it's obviously if you're a business analyst yeah, maybe you should just know basic stats and, you should be able to like write queries and write SQL when like, you should know whatever business analyst should do. Or if you're a developer, you should, whatever, you should know those things. But I think from what I've seen, what really makes it difficult for most people to get a job at the elite level is just the difference between like I can code to like I understand software. That there's a huge difference there. Or I can write SQL to I am an analyst, right? Like because again, usually they're not just gonna ask you, I don't know what does an analyst do, right? They'll probably give you a problem and say like, okay, now, yeah. Like they just give you a whiteboard and say, okay, now go solve it. And if you don't really know your stuff, then
Okay.
it's gonna be challenging. So I
Okay.
think that's the key insight there. All right.
Okay.
For
Number 9.
1 year,
Will that
yeah,
happen?
number 9. I mean, so again, I mean, this is my opinion, right? I'm sure a lot of people might disagree, but so I think while vibe coding is amazing, I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, just because, like, again, that's kind of, I think it was question 4, right? Like, there's the product, and there's also just like, I mean, I should know, Doctor, Ray, like, there's everything that goes into a company, right? There's just like your go-to market, your sales strategy, your like, so there's a lot of things. It's just not just the product itself. So, like, just because you can, so for example, like the analogy I use is like you can literally, and I challenge you guys to try it. You can literally use a Lovable to like code up a clone of LinkedIn, a clone of Airbnb, or like just pick any product you use, TikTok or whatever. You can have you build a prototype today, like after this call. But that's not going to be, Airbnb. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a site that looks like Airbnb, right? It might work for just when you click around it, but like, there's a reason why, Airbnb has an army of engineers and data scientists and sales. Right? So that's just because like, there's a lot of things that goes beyond just like now I have a website or I have an app that works. So I think, I think it's because of that, like, maybe right now it is unlikely, but I also think it's feasible because like I mean, if you have like a really unique use case that maybe nobody has, and maybe AI gets better, like it's definitely possible. I mean, like people are definitely, for example, there was a company I forget the name now that was bought for like several millions of dollars. I think it's an Israeli company that actually does like vibe coding as well. I think they were bought for like I don't know 64 something million dollars, something like that. It was like definitely less than like I don't know 5 people, something like that, right? So yeah, so you can definitely do more with like way, way, way less than what you would need before. But $1 billion company for one employee right now, I would say probably unlikely, just because, just from my experience, like the product is just, it's like half the battle, right? There's all these other things you need to figure out to really get to scale. So that's kind of
Okay.
my, yeah, that's my thinking there.
Right. For those of us that want to travel and also live in ATL or one of those places, what's the demand like right now for AI specialists, automation experts, all that stuff? Is it like massive demand? Would we start getting where people are going to start outsourcing AI roles to India, to Nigeria, and to other places? Is it that bad or it's slowly growing?
I mean, so I mean, that's a good question. So, like right now, most of the demand is actually at the like the 0.0001%. I'm sure you read stories of like people getting, $100 million jobs and like just ridiculous, like just ridiculous paycheck for Meta. Like, yeah, so there is
Yeah.
definitely that sort of talent war for like in a PhD level people to build this foundation model. Because that's again, like that's what powers all of this thing we're talking about. Because that's really where the hard work is, and that's what maybe 5, 6 companies in a like in the entire world can do. So that's that's a level of demand there, which obviously like that market is just so small. It's like yeah, that's like just very, very elite people who've been doing this for like for like forever. Now, I think in terms of like everybody else, there is definitely demand just because I think a lot of companies are beginning to explore, prototype. In fact, like I was reading about was the Accenture one, is the companies like a lot of people are like, companies are really trying to um basically like, dip their toes in the waters to like different levels of success as these things play out. So I would say there's definitely demand there. I think the tricky part though in the US, and I think just in most countries right now, is that the market is actually pretty challenging right now, just because of some of the trends recently with like, with like layoffs and again AI working the companies that like cutting roles and like using AI. So I definitely say like, for like folks who have niche AI skills like, like again, like, yeah, especially is whether it's, it's at the data level, it's at the eval level, it's building integrations, like, yeah, there's definitely like an increasing demand for that. And I only expect that to, or to grow. And of course,
Okay.
now to what extent that is outsourced or like that's like locally sourced. I mean, again, that will need to play out depending on, I think right now, for example, like in the US, right, there's a lot of like, talents in the market. Maybe not all of them have, AI skills. So, but there's definitely like a lot of, supply, if you will. But again, I still think ultimately it comes down to like folks who can like differentiate themselves and show that they have the, expertise. There's always, kind of companies who are, big, small, who are looking for people who have that like, unique skills for sure.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay.
11, how do I maintain work-life balance? I mean, like, so, like I said, like I have two kids and, like they definitely keep me busy, and all of that stuff. But I mean, so for me, like, I do a lot of like mountain biking. Like I find time, when I can to go ride bikes. It kind of helps me. But I mean, again, like, I think like a lot of people like, for me, I actually don't think of work-life balance at all. I mean, not like it's a bad thing, but like, I just think of it as it's just my life. I do what I need to do. I need to take care of my family. I need to work. I need to like. So I think because sometimes we think of like work-life balance, like there's work and then there's life, but like it's just your life. You just live your life and like you find time for the things you have to do. So for me, like like my motto in life is do what needs to be done. I mean, so like, but it's definitely challenging for sure. Like again, especially like for folks who like who are married, who have kids. Like it's definitely not easy, and I think the world is just a pretty complicated space right now. But I think for me, yeah, I just try to like, yeah, I just try to like plan my time and like just, maximize it the way I can, of course. And I think I could do more, which again goes back to that like self-reflection. And so I'm always thinking about like, like where can I do more? And also just like, prioritizing my time. Like there's a lot of things I can be doing, but I don't do because it's just a waste of my time, which I don't have. So like I try to just like optimize for like the things that kind of really matter. So often like I'm up early, like I do my workout, or I can spend some time in the morning, take a short course or do, like work on some project. So again, it's just like making it more like a lifestyle, more rather than like it's something I'm gonna like plan, like have a work-life balance and work is 40%. Like like I don't think that works in practice. I think it's a lot easier if it's just you kind of make it like, who you are. Like I'm someone who like who learns, who does stuff, who is curious, and you can always find time for the things that I think you care about, right? I think that, but again, I'm not like it's definitely not easy for sure. Like, there's a project I'm currently, working on like outside work where like, like the last 3 days I haven't had time because I've been doing a bunch of stuff for the house and with my kids. So, it's definitely challenging for sure. But again, it's just it's kind of like what we have to do anyway. So you find time, where you can, and that's what I try to. And I would just end that. I think it's definitely very important to have like that thing that you escape to, and I think a lot of people don't. And of course, hopefully it's not scrolling on social media. That's a waste of time. But I think it's good to have something that you can escape to, whether that's sports, whether that's just like something positive that I think can be your escape route. I think for me is is going in the woods, riding my bike, like that's how I disconnect. And I can just, because if I'm on my bike and I'm riding, like stuff, I mean, I'm just thinking about what's in front of me, and it's that 30 minutes to 1 hour, 2 hours, like like however I'm riding, that's just all I think about. So yeah, I think that's super healthy to have something like that. I kind of just, that's basically it's your space to kind of have time to yourself. But of
Okay.
course it could be anything for you.
Yeah. We've created a program for you. So what do you think? The Ebenezer mentoring program for AI, how feasible is that? So that you can guide so many others around the world on how to just get these things right into the future. Tell us, what are
Yeah,
your
no,
thoughts?
yeah, no, this is, I mean, I definitely will be. I will be honored and happy to do that. I mean, like, I didn't even, yeah, like a couple of years ago, I actually started a platform. I actually, that was during pandemic. So, like, a friend of mine started a platform online, that we created, like, like a full stack development course, and we, offered it for free. We trained like 1,000 folks in Nigeria. And I still have, like a lot of those guys are, doing well. They have jobs, some in Canada. So like, again, like something I'm passionate about. I'm always looking, forward to have opportunities to kind of help folks. So I mean, obviously, I'm definitely happy to work with the team to see, how we can do, and I think the good thing is obviously, there's a lot of resources that I have access to, a lot of friends are also Nigerians who, like one of my good friend, is a researcher at Microsoft who is like, in the weeds of like building models, our friends who work, just name the company, and, like our friends who do, AI stuff. So like, it's not just me, I think, I can also help connect folks to people who work in kind of different, like aspect of AI, because again, it's actually a pretty broad space. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely happy to help put something like that together. And I think mentorship is good. I mean, I can't underestimate, again, for me, like obviously, meeting you, Dr. Orlando was was definitely a good thing in my life, and I think I learned a lot. And he also gave me opportunity to meet, folks like, Dr. Yomi. I'm sure you know Yomi, right? He used to be like, he
Yeah,
used to run Microsoft Consulting
yeah,
Services, and
yeah,
it's like my uncle now, and I only met him, because I worked for you, and then I was on that project that, I think it was an NPC in Abuja, and right outside I met
yeah,
Yomi,
yeah.
and like, he's my mentor, like over the years, and it's someone that I think, plays a very critical role in my life. So yeah, yeah, I definitely think, actually, I think a lot of people, a lot of young people, maybe even young Nigerians that don't, they don't leverage that enough, and maybe they don't find the right uh, mentors, and yeah, I definitely think it plays a good role, because sometimes it's just easy if you have someone that basically, you know done what you want to do, or like being there, they can just, they can save you time and just tell you what to focus on, so I think, yeah, I think it's something that I'll be, open to, and I think, yeah, I
That's
think, yeah, I think we can
excellent.
make it work.
Okay. So is somebody's asking the thing you did on the full stack develop, is it on YouTube? Is it still available? Can people go back to it?
No,
The
yeah. So
training you
we,
talked about.
yeah. So we took it down eventually. Even though my friend and I have been thinking about like maybe bringing it back up. I mean, so the reason why we took it down eventually was, one, we did it. I mean, was mostly because of the pandemic, when I knew a lot of Nigerian people were home, and like people didn't have things to do. So we just thought, okay, like this is a good time to just help people upskill, and I think it was very successful. And then, like, after the pandemic, it was just kind of getting expensive to run. And actually, I think, maybe I should reach out to you, then maybe we'll have figure something out. But anyway, like, we took it down because, I think we were kind of done with that cohort. It was pretty expensive to kind of run. And then obviously a lot of this, like, AI boom started coming out. And there's just a lot of like free resources online that we just thought, okay, like, maybe we don't want to run our own platform, because there's just a lot of, there's a lot of free resources out there that people can use. But I mean, I think we can definitely figure out a way to maybe bring it back, maybe like in a different shape, because I think the thing that was most valuable, from a lot of the students that we taught, in the program, wasn't just because obviously you can go on like any of this site and read the things, but a lot of times, like, people get stuck and they don't. Again, it goes back to what I'm saying, is like really understanding. And the way we did the program was, it was very hands-on, right? In fact, like, I built the software. You would basically like take the course, write you have to write codes. I mean, the code we're using, like, basically, like, you write the code on the platform, we will use code to like grade the thing that you wrote. Like, so it was like you have to write code essentially, and you have to do the thing. And we also had like, office hours where, we would join calls with people and like explain things in depth. So it was very, obviously, it was also very time consuming as well. So yeah, I think, yeah, I think the cost is not up anymore. But again, I think I can, we can figure out, like, I can send resources. Again, there's a lot of free courses out there, a lot of free materials out there. So, I can definitely send folks some of those. And then again, like, if folks, like, yeah, if there's enough interest in maybe, talking to somebody, getting someone that can kind of guide you, yeah, I can see, maybe like we can put together a team again. Again, I have a lot of friends who have also very, in fact, like, one of my friends also, works at Google. He's super passionate about education and helping folks in Nigeria and stuff like that. So yes, I definitely have like people who are super interested and, who've been in the industry for a very long time, and they'll be
Right.
happy to kind of
Okay.
figure out, like, I guess, how we can bring that back up in some fashion. I think, I don't know if it's gonna work exactly the way we
Great,
did it,
great,
or
great
yeah, but
news.
we can
We've
figure
got a
something
couple of
out.
things on AI. Thank you very much, Ella. We've got a couple of things on AI that we're doing this year. We've been holding AI classes since January. We're going to rethink some of these things as we prepare for 2026. And we will definitely come back to you. I mean, relative to some of those things, thoughts, ideas, and even resources, people that can help join and drive some of these things. So definitely we'll come back to you in that regard. Once again, everybody, a massive round of applause for Tola Ebenezer here. Everybody, a round of applause. This has been an excellent program. Thank you very much for your time. You've literally spoken for the past 2 hours as it is. Thank God we have this recorded. There are many things that you said that we all need to go back to just to rethink what we are doing as organizations, as individuals, relative to our lives, relative to our careers, and definitely relative to the world of work and artificial intelligence. Tola, we cannot thank you enough. I mean, this is pretty much like 7 o'clock. For us, it's public holiday in Nigeria. Some people are here from Ghana. It's not public holiday in Ghana. It's also not public holiday for you. So I know that about now you're going to have to get coffee and go to your day job as it is. So we cannot thank you enough for this. Tola, please put your LinkedIn page again in the the link to your LinkedIn page in the chat room so that we can follow you. And we're definitely coming back to you, and so that you can also help us rally some of your friends as we prepare for our AI series even in the year 2026 as it is. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. God bless you. As I said, this is not a commercial agreement or engagement. You've only done this free for us and as part of your giving back and corporate social responsibility. And we really do thank you. Thank you very much, Tola. We didn't get an opportunity to see your face though, so we can see your pictures, but we don't know what you look like. So
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't know
yeah,
whether,
this is me
so
for folks. Yeah,
everybody
for
good.
folks.
So everybody, I hope you can see now, right? This is exactly what he looks like because I know that we can see your picture, but we haven't had the good fortune of seeing your face since we started today. So now everybody can see what you look like as it is. So once again, thank you very much. We appreciate you. God bless you, and we definitely look forward to see you in future sessions. And if you've got other resources, other things that you think that we'll find useful, please just share with us. We have a community. The Transformation College is our CSR program. So we run free school. It's an accredited school and it's free. So we pretty much modeled it around the college education system in the North America, both in Canada and in the US. Even the text and the materials that we use, they're all North American aligned. We use materials from OpenStack,
Right.
OpenStacks with the X behind it. That's what we use, and it's a free school that we run. Ideally, it's people who can't afford to go to universities or pay for polytechnics or universities, but they can afford data, and hopefully they have a device. They can be a part of the school, and that's what we've been doing for about 2 years. And this is very important to me as a person, and obviously to all of us. So, once again, Mr. Tola, thank you very much. God bless you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Doctor. Again, it's yeah, I also commend you, and the team for this. I think this is huge. I think the impact is it's just I think these are things that you can't really quantify. So I'm very honored to be to be a part of this. So yeah, thank you all.
You even have a whiteboard behind you or some paper that are in your home where you're writing stuff. I can't imagine it. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Please fill the feedback form in the chat room. Please fill the feedback form in the chat room and also the attendance. We appreciate you all. Thank you very much for taking out of your public holiday if you're in Nigeria and taking out of your work day if you're in Ghana and in other places. I hope this has been worth your time and your effort. Thank you very much. God bless you. Tola, we appreciate you once again. Thank you very much. Over to you, Edith.
Right. Once again, from me, thank you very much, Sir Ebenezer, for a very wonderful time out with you today. I was just glued to my system, and some of my colleagues also, they've been glued to their systems, and we've been having interactions backdoor with the information you've been dishing out to us since. So thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who have made it to join us on the call this day. So just quickly, yes. So if you are still here and you have people whom you think would benefit from this program, because this From us, we believe this program is beneficial to everyone, but if you have people around you who would benefit from this program, please do share the link to the registration page with them. Emmanuel, can we put the link in the chat room? We have the entrepreneurship free, and we actually started September 20th, but the program kicked off last Saturday, and this Saturday would be the second class, but it's still not late for you to join the program. And we have the other side to it, which is a diploma in information systems. And like Dr. Lando had mentioned, we're using the North American curriculum from OpenStack. And so what you're learning from Transformation College is preparing you for the now and for the future. This is not an outdated curriculum. It is a current curriculum. As a matter of fact, the information system curriculum we're using was developed this year by OpenStack. So this is very current, and we're encouraging you all to sign up for these classes on Saturdays. So all you need to do is click on the link and register, and you only have to pay a registration fee to start of 10,000 Naira, as the case may be. So please, Emmanuel, let's share the link in the chat room. Feel free to register. A registration window is still open. And then please follow us on our visit our website, email us or call us if you have inquiries, and follow us on all our social media handles. Emmanuel, I believe these are being posted in the chat room information, and carry you along and keep you updated with what is happening in Transformation College. So once again, without having to keep you on the call any further, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. It was a pleasure hanging out with you today. So do enjoy the rest of your day. Stay happy and stay blessed until we see you again on any of our programs. Thank you and God bless.